Reality called. I declined to answer. I love when things fix themselves. Except for cars, because then you know it's just going to break again, but you have no idea when or where. My friend Bob died because I couldn't remember his blood type. It was tough to see him go like that, but man, he was strong right to the end. He just kept saying, "Be positive, be positive." I wanted to take a bath, but I decided to leave it where it was. You know, I've heard that people pick their nose, but I was just born with mine. What do you call an evil creature that plays practical jokes on people? Frankenstein's monster. Where I work, I got 400 people underneath me, bragged Bill to the man next to him at the bar. Really, replied the man next to him at the bar. Where do you work? At a cemetery, said Bill. Ah! A copy of A Christmas Carol fell on my toe. Oh my gosh, it hurts like the dickens. I've learned that if my wife says she'll be ready in 15 minutes, then she'll be ready in 15 minutes. There's no reason for me to hound her every half hour. Do you think they say break a leg before going on stage because every play has a cast? What do you call a snobbish criminal walking down the stairs? A condescending. I spent the last 2 weeks studying escapology. I really need to get out. Last week I opened the refrigerator and a tub of margarine fell out and landed on my foot. And this morning it still hurts. I can't believe it's not better. So I popped into the shop to grab a few items and I noticed that everybody was yelling at each other. So I looked around and I realized my mistake. I had gone to the Holler store and not the dollar store. What happened when the icicle landed on the guy's head? It knocked him out cold. What does garlic do before taking a shower? Take its clothes off. How do you get a squirrel's attention? Act like a nut. You know, I used to have a dyslexic cat. He would walk around the house yelling, "Whoa-em! Whoa-em!" Apparently my computer caught a cold. I left Windows open.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. Trying to master Mahjong is a futile endeavor. What do you call a dead magician? An abracadaver. What's a quarterback's least favorite pastry? Turnovers. Why don't you ever see hippos hiding in trees? Because they're that good at it. Some people say my jokes are childish, but obviously they're full grown. Is a man waiting for a haircut called a barbecue? I was kind of a weird kid. For example, I was the kid next door's imaginary friend. I stole that from Emo Phillips, folks. Why didn't the astronaut come home to his wife? He needed the space. My wife and I were sitting in a fancy restaurant, but she wasn't finding anything on the menu that she quite liked. When the waiter approached, she said, "Do you serve crabs here?" He turned to her and said, "Oh, dear, you folks have nothing to worry about. We'll be happy to serve your husband." What side of the turkey has more feathers? The outside. What do you call a polite person that builds bridges? A civil engineer. A grasshopper sits down at the bar and the bartender says, "Hey, I've got a drink named after you." And the grasshopper says, "You have a drink named Steve?" A woman is sitting at her husband's funeral when a man leans in and asks, "Do you mind if I say a word?" She says, "No, please, go ahead." So the man stands up, clears his voice, and addresses the crowd and says, "Plethora." Then he sits back down, and the woman leans in and says, "Thank you. That means a lot." My wife says I'm the cheapest person that she knows. I'm not buying it. I can't decide what kind of mattress to buy. I think I might have to sleep on it. Nobody understands my love of Def Leppard quite like my four sons, Gunter, Gleben, Glauten, and Globen. There's a new restaurant in town called Karma. There's no menu. You just get what you deserve. I love watching shows about space and time. I hope they continue them. Nowadays, Lance is not a common name, but back in medieval times, people were named Lance a lot. You know, it takes a lot of balls to golf the way I do. How much salt do lobsters use when cooking spaghetti? Just a pinch. If corn is used to make corn oil, and olives are used to make olive oil, what the heck is baby oil made out of? You know, I've always wanted a job cleaning mirrors. It's something I could really see myself doing. I didn't want to believe that my dad was stealing from his job as a road worker, but when I got home, the signs were there. Where do you learn to make banana splits? At Sunday school. Every morning I take a cow for a walk through the vineyard. Yes, I heard it through the grapevine. Why did the banana go to the doctor? Because it wasn't peeling well. Ouchie wawa! That's the noise you make when you hurt yourself tripping over a small Mexican dog. What do you call a fly without wings? A walk. I've never owned a good pair of binoculars, but it's something I'd like to look into. Why are French snails the fastest snails in the world? Less cargo. You know, life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. Why don't oysters donate to charity? Because they're shellfish. I should start telling you folks all my jokes about library books. They're long overdue. Did you know that the Earth is over 70% water and it's all uncarbonated? You might say the Earth is flat. I once tried selling yeast. It was to raise some dough. Can somebody please tell me what the lowest rank in the army is? Every time I ask, they tell me it's private. What do you call a magician that's lost his magic? Ian. What do lawyers wear to work? Lawsuits. Did you hear about the dyslexic zombie? It only eats Brian's. Singing in the shower is lots of fun until you get suds in your mouth, and then it just turns into a soap opera. I just heard that the man that fell into the upholstery machine last week has decided... Fuck. Somebody asked me, what are two items that hold a lot of water? And I said, well, damn. Tried smoking a brisket once, but it kept going out. My friend's dog just got arrested. He had unpaid barking tickets. I'm really familiar with 25 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why. Why did the cat join a band? Because he wanted to be a percussionist. I have a joke about construction, but I'm still working on it. People in Athens rarely get up before sunrise. Dawn is tough on Greece. I pinned a Timex to the post just outside my house. It's the neighborhood watch. I got a letter from the government saying they're going to garnish my wages over taxes. I'm hoping for parsley. I went to buy some camouflage pants yesterday, but I couldn't find any. I'd love to see a forklift lift a crate of forks. It'd be so darn literal. It's like you're using the machine exactly for what it's made for. Who buys the most Barbies worldwide? Australian fathers. I'm pretty sure my last words are going to be something like, I wonder what this button does. After I play guitar, I figured picking up the piano would be easy. Yeah, and that's how I ended up in the hospital with a hernia. You know you've reached middle age when all you exercise is caution. When two vegetarians get into a fight, is it still called a beef?
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
Not to brag, but I made 6 figures last year. On a separate note, I was voted the worst employee at the toy factory. If you get a message from me about canned pork, do not open it. It's spam. Why is the ocean always blue? Because the shore never waves back. How do aliens get their baby to sleep? They rock it. I'm thinking that toasters might be the original pop-up notifications. To whomever stole my glasses, I will find you. I have contacts. Why did the candle quit its job? It was burned out. Never tell a secret to a pig. They all squeal eventually. I'm quite fond of cheesy puns. It's just how, I roll. 2 fish swim into a concrete wall. One turns to the other one and says, "Damn!" I just bought a good used time machine. They sure don't make them like they're going to. My wife asked me to go to the store to pick up 6 cans of Sprite. When I got home, I found out that I picked 7 up. Did you know that the shortest distance between 2 jokes is a straight line? I didn't think orthopedic shoes would help, but I stand corrected. It's hard to write a good drinking song. I never make it past the first few bars. I just got a job at a paperless office. I thought everything was great until the first time I had to use the bathroom. How do cows stay up to date? They read the moose paper. How does a penguin make a house? He glues it together. My wife asked me to put the toilet seat down. I'm not sure why I was carrying it around anyways. I was going to tell you a joke about a girl who only eats plants, but you've probably never heard before. What's the most popular vehicle in Norway? The Fjord Explorer. My wife asked me what the language of love was. Apparently Klingon wasn't the answer she was looking for. I've got an inferiority complex, but it's not a very good one. What's a computer's favorite snack? Memory chips. But only a few bites each. Why do melons only get married in church? Because they can't elope. A man was washing his car with his son when his son turned to his dad and said, "Dad, next time can you just use a sponge?" You know, at first I thought my dad spent too much on his hairpiece, but looking at it now, I see it was a small price to pay. I was gonna cook alligator for dinner, but then I realized I only have a crock pot. Where do armies belong? In sleeveys. I got a new job at the soup factory. The stock options are great. Did you hear about the skunk that went to church? He had his own pew. What sound does an injured orca make? A killer whale. I was the main suspect in the theft of a toasted cheese sandwich. The police grilled me for hours. How do you make a robot angry? keep pushing his buttons. Get a lot of weird looks at the gym, but you know what? Screw them. They can get their own pizza. I spent the last 2 weeks studying escapology. I really need to get out. What's the biggest difference between April Fools and Thanksgiving? One you're prankful, the other one you're thankful. How do you fix a broken jack-o'-lantern? With a pumpkin patch. I just finished telling my luggage we weren't going on vacation this year. Now I'm dealing with emotional baggage. What has a spine but no bones? A book. My nephew said to me, "Stop it with the corny jokes, uncle." And I said to him, "Why? What are you going to do? Call the crops?" I had a weird dream last night where I was steering a truck in a circle while I was flipping pancakes with the other hand. I was tossing and turning all night. When my wife said she was leaving me because of my obsession with the monkeys, I thought she was kidding. But then I saw her face. I found a book called How to Solve 50% of Your Problems. So I bought 2. Why did the mathematician become a musician? Because she realized she had good algorithm. My wife told me I have to stop acting like a flamingo, so I had to put my foot down. My wife just found out I replaced our bed with a trampoline. She hit the ceiling. Why aren't dogs good dancers? Because they have 2 left feet. My therapist says I have a preoccupation with revenge. We'll see about that. What's heavier, a gallon of water or a gallon of butane? A gallon of water. Butane is a lighter fluid. Despite not being a twin, I fully support the creation of Twins Day. After all, twins are people too. Why did the bee get married? Because she finally found her honey. Why did the orange stop halfway across the road? Well, it ran out of juice. Marriage means commitment, but so does insanity. You know, it takes a lot of balls to golf the way I do. I tried smoking a salmon once, but I couldn't keep the thing lit. How did the dumb guy manage to break his leg while raking leaves? He fell out of the tree. I asked my wife what she liked best about me, my chiseled looks or my incredible physique, and she said my sense of humor. What's cooler than a talking dog? A spelling bee. Vampires aren't real. Well, unless you count Dracula. I called my wife to let her know I saw a fox on the way to work. She asked me how I knew. Fuck, why? My friend asked me to help him round up his 37 sheep. I said, sure, 40. I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every second of it. Where do fingers grow? On palm trees. I got fired from my job as a psychic, but I guess that kind of makes sense. I didn't see it coming. Why don't jellyfish ever lie? Because they're transparent. Well, my IQ test results came back. They're negative. What do you get when you cross a fish with an elephant? Swimming trunks. I don't want to party like it's 1999. I want to shop like it's 1999. I hired a snail as my life coach. Progress is slow, but it's really well grounded. What's the favorite shoe wear of bakers? Loafers. Why does my wife always wait until I'm at the exact opposite end of the house before asking me? The other day I bought a thesaurus, but when I got home I noticed all the pages were blank. I have no words for how upset I am. Speaking of thesauruses, I must have the body of a porn star because all my clothes are tagged XXX. 250 pounds on Earth is 95.5 pounds on Mercury. I'm not fat. I'm on the wrong planet. Why did the Scarecrow win a Nobel Prize? Because he was outstanding in his field. Escaped convicts make the worst authors. They never finish their sentence. I went to my doctor's office with a suspicious-looking mole. He said they all look like that and I should have left it in my garden. What do ghosts wear when their eyesight fails? Spookticles. Have you heard of the California raisins? I'm just raising awareness. Why did the deer make an appointment with the dentist? He had buck teeth. If you see a road sign that says survey crew up ahead, turns out they are not interested in your opinion. I know that now. What do teachers eat when they're hungry? Academia nuts. I am such a big Star Wars fan that I named my kids after the characters. My son Luke thinks it's awesome. My daughter Chewbacca, not so much. You want to know how to kidnap an elderly person? Just have them sit in a beanbag chair. Why do penguins wear glasses? To help their eyesight. Why did the Clydesdale give the pony a glass of water? Because he was a little horse. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food. No atmosphere. Nobody understands my love of Def Leppard more than my 4 sons, Gunter, Gleben, Glauten, and Globen. My boss told me to have a good day, so I took that as my cue to go home. Did you hear about the dyslexic zombie? It only eats Brian's. I think being arachnophobic is just stupid. I mean, who cares if 2 spiders get married? The fact that many people can't distinguish between entomology and entomology bugs me in ways that I can't put into words. I was watching a play when an actor fell through the floorboards. Turns out he was just going through a stage. I'm not saying I'm attractive, but when I get naked, I turn the shower on. I tried to take a picture of some fog this morning. Missed. I just found out that there's a town called Big Ugly, West Virginia. In all these years, I thought my ancestors came from Europe. My wife asked me to make sure I put the toilet seat down, so I told it it's ugly and nobody likes it. A skeleton walks into a bar and says, "Give me a beer and a mop." My favorite teacher in grade school was Mrs. Turtle. She had a weird name, but she taught us well. I went to school to be a magician, but I flunked out. The final exam was full of trick questions. What do you call a Frenchman wearing sandals? Philippe Philop. You know, I got a lot of jokes about unemployed people, but none of them work. A man walks into a bar with a newt on his shoulder. The bartender says, "Wow, that's an interesting pet. What's its name?" And the man says, "Well, I call him Tiny." The bartender says, "Well, that's not very original. Why'd you call him that?" The man says, "Well, he is my newt." I've read that no 2 people see colors the same way. Apparently, they're just pigments of our imagination. Why was a broom late for work? It overswept. I can't believe I got fired from the calendar factory. All I did was take a couple days off. Arr, I've got a bounty on me head. What does skunks say in church? Let us spray. Yesterday, Wendy looked at me with tears in her eyes, saying, "I just can't do this anymore." So I took over chopping the onions. Just because I choose not to drink doesn't mean that I'm automatically not fun to be with. No, that's a separate choice that I also decided to make. You know, I've never beaten my computer at a game of chess, but turns out I am way better at kickboxing than it is. I called my wife to let her know that I saw a fox on the way to work. She asked me how I knew it was on its way to work. I just hung up. My friend asked me to round up his 37 sheep. I said, sure, 40. My wife is leaving me because she thinks I'm obsessed with astronomy. What planet is she on? I was going to tell you a joke about construction, but I'm still working on it. Once upon a time, there was a king who was only 12 inches tall. He was a terrible king, but he was a great ruler. Lightning recently struck the orchestra, but only one person was hit: the conductor. Eye drops are technically blinker fluid. How do you make a skeleton laugh? Tickle his funny bone. Finland just closed its borders. That's right, nobody'll be crossing the finish line. My family left me because of my obsession with pasta. I'm feeling kinda lonely now. Do you know where a sheep gets a haircut? At the barber shop. Did you know that Saturday and Sunday are the strongest days? That's right. Monday through Friday are just weekdays. So, how's your summer bodies coming, folks? Mine's looking like I better have a really good personality. A group of chess enthusiasts had just checked into a hotel and were standing around the lobby, just bragging over and over about their recent victories. Eventually, the manager came out of his office and asked them to disperse. They asked him why, and he said, "I can't stand chestnuts." When he was a little kid, my younger brother asked me how taxes worked, so I ate 35% of his ice cream. The gluteus maximus is the largest muscle in the body. In fact, you could call it a huge ass muscle. Never challenge death to a pillow fight, unless you're prepared for the repercussions. I tried to start a professional hide-and-seek team, but it didn't work out. Turns out good players are hard to find. Why do cows wear bells? Because their horns don't work. My pet pig lost his voice. I guess you might call him disgruntled. The other day my best friend told me he thought he might be delusional. I am not looking forward to the time when I have to tell him that I'm imaginary. 3 weeks ago I sent my hearing aids in for repairs. I haven't heard anything since. What's black and white and has 8 wheels? A penguin on roller skates. I didn't think vodka could solve my problems, but I thought maybe it was worth a shot. Or 2. You know, I'd like to have kids one day. I don't think I could handle them for much more time than that, though. What's a lazy kangaroo called? A pouch potato. I was in a Windows store the other day looking for new windows for the house when I got the urge to run around naked. But somebody had spilled Windex on the floor and that kept me from streaking. You know what makes me throw up? That dartboard I mounted on the ceiling. Guess who I bumped into on the way to getting my glasses fixed? Everybody. Why is Cinderella so bad at basketball? Well, you would be too if your coach was a pumpkin. I told my wife that when I die, I hope it happens during sex, and she said, well, at least it'll be quick for you. Why do mummies avoid vacations? Because they're afraid if they relax, they might unwind. Kale is so versatile. It literally fits in any size or shape garbage can. Which knight of the round table was the beefiest? Sirloin. I had the nastiest, most rude cashier the other day at a grocery store. That'll teach me for using self-checkout. I was at my friend's parents' farm when his dad asked me if I can help him round up 18 cows. I said, sure. That'd be 20 cows. I just learned that Albert Einstein actually existed. I always thought he was a theoretical physicist. While on the subject of vampires, how do you know if a vampire's sick? Oh, he'll be coughing. What sits on the seabed and has anxiety? A nervous wreck. A photon checks into a hotel and is asked if he needs help with his luggage. Says, no thanks, I'm traveling light. I think a spelling bee is really more amazing than a talking dog. A truckload of Vicks VapoRub flipped over at a major intersection recently. Amazingly, there was no congestion for 8 hours. Dear math, grow up and solve your own problems. How many apples grow on a tree? All of them. My neighbor asked me to help him install a new ceiling fan. When he turned it on, he was shocked to find out I'm not a very good electrician. What's better than Ted Danson? Ted dancing and singing. Just curious, but are national anthems considered country music? What's a beaver's favorite style of beer? Lager. I tried to explain to my 4-year-old that pooping your pants is perfectly normal, but he's still making fun of me. Do you know the definition of a Freudian slip? It's when you intend to say one thing, but you say a mother. How many apples can you grow on a tree? All of them. Why are all movies that star turkeys rated R? Because of their foul language. The Invisible Man and the Invisible Woman got married. Their kids were not much to look at. My proctologist used to be a photographer. Last time I went to go see him, he said, bend over and say cheese. Why don't bananas ever get lonely? 'Cause they hang around in bunches. What sounds like a sneeze, but is made out of leather? A shoe. What do you call a guy who's really loud? Mike. Did you hear about the wig thief that escaped from prison? Police are combing the area for him. I broke my finger last week, but on the other hand, I'm okay. What's the best way to quit being a vegan? Going cold turkey. Every time I try to eat healthy, a chocolate bar looks at me and snickers. What do you call a crocodile detective? An investigator. I think my dog might be a genius. I asked him what 2 minus 2 was, and he said nothing. Takes a lot of balls to golf the way I do. I can't say for certain that my wife is addicted to making pancakes, but the evidence certainly is stacking up. I recently took a poll where I found out that 100% of the people inside the tent were really upset that I did that. How many tropical birds does it take to screw in a light bulb? Toucan. My grandfather always said, when one door closes, another door opens. You know, he was a wise, wonderful man, but a horrible cabinet maker. I'm at the age where if I was single and somebody brought me a prostitute and they said, are you ready for some super sex? I would choose the soup. What was the snowman doing in the vegetable garden? Picking his nose. What do you get when you cross a dog with an antenna? A golden receiver. Well, I just got fired from my job yesterday, and on the way out the door, my ex-manager hands me a bag of used coffee. I say, what's this? He says, it's your fucking... Shout out there to all the people that don't know the opposite of in. My neighbor asked me to help him install a new ceiling fan. When he turned it on, he realized, fuck off. Why do birds fly south in the winter? Because it's way too far to walk. What do you call an attractive monster? Pretty scary. Did you hear about the cross-eyed... Fuck off. My grandfather had the heart of a lion, and because of that, a lifetime ban at the local zoo. I once read a book about glue. I couldn't put it down. How does a rancher keep track of his cattle? With his calculator. Why don't penguins fly? Because they're too short to be pilots. Why do melons have large weddings? Well, why not? They can't elope. I had to break it off with my calendar. Too many dates, not enough commitment. My friend asked me to round up his 37 sheep. I said, sure, 40. My son was on eBay all day today. I think tomorrow I might lower the price. They don't watch the Flintstones in Dubai, but Abu Dhabi do. After an unsuccessful harvest, why did the farmer decide to try a career in music? Because he had a ton of sick beats. So what if I don't know what Armageddon means? It's not like it's the end of the world. What do you call the fleshy bit between a shark's teeth? Slow swimmers. How do you get a farm girl to like you? A tractor. I used to work at the cement plant, but I had to quit. That job was getting harder and harder. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana. I can't believe I forgot to go to the gym yesterday. That's like 2 years in a row. Where do penguins keep their money? In a snowbank. When I buy a pack of a dozen ribs, I usually only eat ribs number 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11. I do prefer prime ribs. Why didn't the skeleton dance at the club? He had no body to dance with. What do you call a flower that runs on electricity? A power plant. Did you hear about the guy who invented Mentos? They say he made a mint. A new species of head lice has been discovered that is resistant to all known forms of treatment. It has scientists scratching their heads. I'm petrified about today's science news. Genetically altered crabs with cheetah genes? Now that could go sideways fast. Speaking of that pickle, why did he wear sunglasses? Because he was also cool as a cucumber. I just joined an autopsy club. Tuesday is open mic night. If I had to guess what the most groundbreaking invention of all time was, my guess would probably be the shovel. Did you hear about the opera singer that threw the first ball at the Dodgers game the other day? They say she had perfect pitch. How many drinks before you cut off a bird? 2 cans. I called my wife to tell her I saw a fox on the way to work. She asked me how I knew it was on its way to work. I just hung up on her. If you can't look back at your younger self and realize you were an idiot, there's a good chance you're still an idiot. I was in a Zoom meeting and I cracked a joke. No one laughed. Turns out I'm not remotely funny. When I was young, I used to sneak out of the house to go to parties. Now I sneak out of parties to go home. I tried to start a professional hide-and-seek team, but it didn't work out. Turns out good players are hard to find. I had an uncle so proud of the gold medal that he won at the Olympics that he had it bronzed. What do you say to the triangle player after the big show? Thanks for everything. What's the difference between bird flu and swine flu? Bird flu requires tweetment, and swine flu requires ointment. What do you call a beehive with no exit? Unbelievable. I sued the airline for losing my luggage. I lost my case. I'm an expert in procrastination. I'll prove it to you tomorrow. What do pigs use to clean up? Hogwash. Little known fact that William Shakespeare used to be known as Billy Wobbleskewer to his buddies. Why couldn't the sesame seed leave the casino? Because he was on a roll. My neighbor asked me to help him install a new ceiling fan. When he turned it on, he was shocked to find out I'm not a very good electrician. Dogs can't operate MRI machines, but cats can. You know, I think during a game of charades would be a pretty bad time to have a heart attack. I wasn't close to my dad when he died, which is kind of good because he stepped on a landmine. Why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use a honeycomb. Did you know that cottage cheese isn't actually a cheese? Yeah, it's just a curd to me. Why did the phone get glasses? Because it lost its contacts. Why did the boy do his homework on an airplane? Because he wanted a higher education. My life is like a newspaper. There's a new issue every day. Why does my wife always wait until I'm on the opposite end of the house before asking me? What do you call a snowman with a six-pack? The abdominal snowman. I was wondering why the ball was getting bigger, and then it hit me. Two Wi-Fi engineers got married. The reception was amazing. What do you call a fish with 4 eyes? A fish. A man went into a woman's clothing store to buy his wife a new bra. He sought the help of a sales lady who asked him, "Bust?" And he said, "No, I think it just wore out." It's nice to know that my wife still finds me sexy after all these years. Every time I walk past her, she says, "What an ass." I asked my boss if I could leave early, and he said, "Sure, if I make up the time." I said, "That's easy. It's 87 past 53. See you tomorrow." You know, I got a lot of growing up to do. I realized that yesterday while I was sitting in my fort. I tried to smoke a salmon once, but it made the papers all greasy and it was really hard to keep lit. Autocorrect goes straight to heel. Did you know that penguins always stay cool under pressure? That's right. They never get frustrated. Parallel lines have so much in common. It's a real shame they'll never meet. What does a penguin waiter say to his customers? What'll it be? You know, I like the name Brie, even though it's a little cheesy. What's a penguin's favorite Mexican food? Burritos. It's the harvest moon tonight, folks. That's traditionally when Neil Young rises from the most sincere marijuana patch to play a 3-minute, 2-note guitar solo for deserving girls and boys. I want to be rich like my dad. He wanted to be rich too. Why don't ducks ever have spare cash? Hey, they got bills, man. Did you hear about the wig thief that escaped from prison? Police are combing the area. I really need to confront my phobia of German sausages, but I have to tell you, I fear the worst. After dinner, the wife asked me if I could clear the table. I needed a running start, but I made it. I accidentally combined all good and no worries when talking, and I said all worries, and that is the most honest thing I've ever said in my life. What's green and has wheels? Grass. I lied about the wheels part. I just finished writing a book on penguins. Next time I think I'll use paper. What do you call an unpredictable camera? A loose cannon. Why do the French love eating snails? Because they hate fast food. What smells better than it tastes? A nose. I tell my mirror jokes. It doesn't reflect well on me. After an unsuccessful harvest, why did the farmer decide to try a career in music? Because he had a ton of sick beets. Because he had a ton of sick beets. I'll never forget my dad's face when I gave him his 50th birthday card. One would have been enough, was all he said. What is a penguin's favorite breed of dog? Bichon Frise. I used to play piano by ear, but now I use my hands. Procrastination is a dish best served. Eventually. What do you call a hippie's wife? Mississippi. What do you call someone who takes care of owls? A hootenanny. I got fitted with the neck brace last year and I haven't looked back since. I went off my diet today. It was easy as pie. You can't lose a homing pigeon. If your homing pigeon doesn't come back, you just lost a pigeon. Which month of the year has 28 days? Well, actually, all of them. What's the hardest thing about learning how to skate? The ice. I've been trying to convince my friend to get a hearing aid, but no matter what I say, he just won't listen. Why do scuba divers fall backwards out of the boat? Because if they fell forwards, they'd fall into the boat. I only seem to get sick on weekdays. I guess I must have a weekend immune system. I asked my gym instructor if he could teach me how to do the splits. He said, well, how flexible are you? I said, well, I can be here pretty much any day except for Tuesdays. How does a rancher keep track of his cattle? With his calculator. At 56 years of age, I've finally been diagnosed with dyslexia. All these years I've been writing letters to Satan. What has 5 toes but isn't your foot? My foot. You know, I was tired yesterday, and I'm tired today. So, does that make me retired? My wife has been reading a lot of gothic horror romances lately, so I asked her, why does Dracula always bite his victims on the neck? And she says, it's simple. He's a neck romancer. My friend asked me to help him round up his 37 sheep. I said, sure, 40. My boss told me to have a good day, so I took that as my cue to go home. I used to live in a snow globe. Every time we had a storm, I was left a little bit shaken. I told my mom I'd call her later, but she insists I just call her Mom. My wife asked me to make sure I put the toilet seat down, so I told it it's ugly and nobody likes it. What did the French fries, gravy, and cheese curds say to the cook? Why are you putting us all together? The closest I've ever come to winning the lottery is finding a rogue onion ring in my French fries. My wife didn't believe me when I said I was going to build a car out of spaghetti, but you should have saw her face when I drove pasta. What did the musician call his 2 twin daughters? Anna 1, Anna 2. Is it okay if I start drinking as soon as the kids get to school, or does that make me a bad teacher? Imagine you walk into a bar and there's a long line of people waiting to take a swing at you. That's the punchline. My wife was telling me that I'm of average intelligence. Now that's just mean. Math jokes. Why was the math book upset? It had way too many problems. Speaking of that, I used to be a crustinator, but I got so good, I went pro. When I was younger, my parents said I could be anyone that I wanted to be. Sitting in jail now, I realize that identity theft is illegal. I asked my wife if sex was a chore to her, and she said no. I feel satisfied after getting chores done. What do you call a red-headed baker? A gingerbread man. I saw a book called How to Solve 50% of Your Problems, so I bought two. My dad's answer to everything is alcohol. He doesn't drink. He's just horrible at crossword puzzles. I asked the librarian if they had any books on paranoia, and she said, "They're right behind you." I've been having a recurring dream about Tom Jones, but my therapist says it's not unusual. Have you heard the joke about yoga? Never mind, it's a bit of a stretch. I suspect that somebody's been secretly adding soil to my garden. The plot thickens. I ran into a lamppost yesterday. Luckily, I only sustained light injuries. I've become an expert at heating up fragrant leaves in boiling water. You might even call it my specialty. Once upon a time, there was a king that was exactly 12 inches tall. He was a terrible king, but he was a great ruler. What happened to the Exorcist's car? It was repossessed. What's the favorite fruit of twins? Pears. What did the blanket tell the bed? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Why is it that one match can start a forest fire, but it takes a whole box of matches to start a campfire? What do you call an army of babies? Infantry. Why don't penguins like talking to strangers? They find it hard to break the ice. My neighbor asked me to help him install a new ceiling fan. When he turned it on, he was shocked to find out I'm not a good electrician. Fuck. What do you call a potato that wears glasses? A spectator. For weeks, my friend's been asking me to go spelunking with them. Yesterday, I finally caved. I think the worst thing about working at the unemployment office would be if you were fired and you had to show up for work the next day. Recently, I bought 51% of the shares of a vampire hunting company. Now I'm the main stakeholder. You know, I think gloves must have been way more important in the past for every single car to have a box dedicated to them. Hey, not to brag, but I was hired as a fitness model yesterday. I'm the before model for other pictures. My grandma used to say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Now, I don't know if that's true or just one of Granny's myths. I've got a friend whose hobby is collecting calendars. In fact, the hobby...
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com.
What do you call somebody who doesn't like pizza? A weirdo. What did the lunchbox say to the refrigerator? Don't hate me just because I'm a little cooler. My cabinet maker was arrested last week for counterfeiting. What kind of room has no doors? A mushroom. Got fired from the ice cream shop this week. I think it's because I only work on 2 Sundays a month. Have you heard about those new corduroy pillows? I hear they're making headlines. Jokes about German sausages are the worst. My wife says I can be an idiot sometimes. Pretty cool of her to give me permission like that. You know what happens when you don't pay your exorcist? You get repossessed. In university, I passed all my courses except for the one on Greek mythology. It was always my Achilles elbow. I got mugged by 6 dwarves last night. Not happy. What do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire? Frostbite. Why did the Oreo go to the dentist? It lost its filling. Did you know that light travels faster than sound? It's the reason why people seem bright until they start talking. I called my wife to let her know that I saw a fox on the way to work. She asked me how I knew it was on its way to work. I just hung up. I've had amnesia for as long as I can remember. I'm at the age where if I was single and somebody brought me a prostitute and they said, "Are you ready for some super sex?" I would choose the soup. I used to live in a snow globe. Every time we had a big storm, I was left shaken. How do flat earthers travel? On a plane. The graveyard across the street is really getting crowded. I think people are dying to get in there. I heard about an experiment in Africa where they tried blessing the rains. It was a total failure. What's the difference between a dog and a marine biologist? One wags its tail, and the other one tags a whale. I tell dad jokes even though I'm not a dad. I guess that makes me a faux pas. I just watched a documentary about beavers. Best damn show I've seen in a while. My wife has a slight impediment to her speech. Every once in a while she has to stop to breathe. The surest way to kill a vampire is a wooden stake to the heart, but you better be 100% certain they're a vampire, because that's pretty much the surest way to kill anything. I told a bad chemistry joke once. I got no reaction. I'm on a 30-day diet. As far as I can tell, I've lost 15 days so far. Where do you take somebody who's been injured in a peekaboo accident? Well, to the ICU, of course. Get your coffee cups, shirts, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. I used to have a handle on life, but then it broke. My friend told me that his date once stopped an F1 race due to unsafe conditions. I told him, I think that's a red flag. My wife asked me to take a spider out instead of killing it, so I brought him out for a bite to eat and a few drinks, and I gotta say, he's a really cool dude. Why did the golfer change his socks? Because he had a hole in one. I struggled with 3 core subjects in school. One was math, and I can't remember the other one. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No-eyed deer. My hotel tried to charge me an extra $10 for air conditioning. That's not cool. What's the difference between an outlaw and an in-law? Outlaws are wanted. My wife asked me to put ketchup on the shopping list. Now I can't read it. What kind of fish works at a hospital? A sturgeon. Why didn't the skeleton cross the road? He had no guts. I made some fish tacos last night, but unfortunately they just ignored them and swam away. What do you use to fix a broken pumpkin? A pumpkin patch. My doctor told me he wanted to speak to me about my weight. And I said, well, thank goodness you said something. You know, I know you're busy, but 40 minutes after my appointment time, you finally get around to seeing me? Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils. Why did the bullet lose its job? It was fired. I used to be into Egyptian architecture. That is until I realized it was all just one big pyramid scheme. My grandfather reached 110 yesterday. That's the last time I let him drive my car. I searched a list of 10 puns to find one that would make me laugh. No pun intended. Why should you never date a baker? Well, I've heard they're a little needy. I brought an egg to a comedy show and he really cracked up. My ex-wife was run over by a bus right in front of where we used to live, and I thought to myself, that could have been me. But then I realized no one's going to let me drive a bus. Last night I accidentally glued my thumb and forefinger together. I'll be okay for a while. My wallet is like an onion. Every time I open it, it brings tears to my eyes. Last year, I gave up drinking for New Year's, but I only lasted 3 days because I ended up hospitalized for dehydration. What has 2 legs but can't walk? A pair of pants. Why don't bananas ever get lonely? Because they hang around in bunches. What do you call an angsty teenaged robot? A cyborg. You know, people are usually shocked when they find out that I'm not a good electrician. Have you ever noticed that gossip seems to travel faster over the sour grapevine? Most people are afraid of heights. I'm afraid of widths. Studies show that the leading cause of dry skin is a towel. I really hope that stevia was named after somebody named Steve. What do you call a well-balanced horse? Stable. What do you call a herd of sheep falling down a hill? A landslide. I accidentally put my organ donor card in an ATM last night. It cost me an arm and a leg. Poop jokes might not be my favorite, but they're definitely number 2. My friend keeps telling me to cheer up. He keeps saying, things could be worse. You could be trapped underground in a big hole filled with water. I know he means well. What does a car and a chair have in common? They both have 4 wheels, except for the chair. Why did the duck fall on the sidewalk? He tripped over a quack. I went to a zoo in a small town the other day and they only had 1 animal, and it was a dog. It was a Shih Tzu. I'm thinking about throwing out my glasses and never wearing them again. I've seen enough. How is Christmas just like your job? You work all year, and in the end, some fat guy in a suit gets credit for everything. I learned something today. Did you know that anal secretions from a beaver can be used as a vanilla substitute? Now, what sick jerk figured that out? Where did the cat go after losing its tail? To the retail store. I was fired from the pet store for arranging the animals by height. They didn't appreciate my criticizing. What do French groundhogs see on Groundhog's Day? Their chateau. I was explaining to my son how the baton worked in relay races, and he got it right away. I really gotta hand it to him. What do you call a guy under suspicion for stealing Amazon packages? The prime suspect. Freddie Mercury, Venus Williams, and Bruno Mars walk into a bar. They didn't plan it that way. A dragon would never explode, but a dino might. Penguins always stay cool under pressure. They're never frost rated. What's the difference between ignorance and apathy? I don't know, and I don't care. How much room does a fungi need to grow? As much room as possible. Last night, my wife and I watched 2 movies back to back. Luckily, I was the one facing the TV. I went to a zoo in a small town the other day and they only had one animal, and it was a dog. It was a Shih Tzu. I found 2 horse steaks in the back of my fridge that were a week past their best before date. I tried them, and they're off! You know, it takes a lot of guts to be an organ donor. So what if I don't know what Armageddon means? It's not like it's the end of the world. If Barbie is so popular, why do you have to buy her friends? My wife blocked me on Facebook because I post way too many bird puns. Well, 2 can play at that game. How much does the chimney cost? Nothing. It's on the house. What do you get when you mix a motorcycle with a joke? A Yamaha! You know, I tried to organize a hide-and-seek tournament, but it's really hard to find good players. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. If athletes get athlete's foot, do astronauts get mistletoe? What kind of music do Bubbles hate? Pop. Why did I bring a pencil to the party? I heard things were going to get sketchy. My wife didn't take my name when we got married. We thought it might be confusing with both of us named Lee. Scientists have discovered that talking to cows make them produce more milk. Apparently it's a case of in one ear, out the udder. What do you call a man who's ready for anything? Just in case. I don't like country music, but I don't mean to denigrate those who do. And if you listen to country music, denigrate means to put down. Do you know why your butt crack goes up and down and not side to side? Because if it did, every time you slid down the stairs on your behind, you would go... 2 antennas met on a roof, fell in love, and got married. The wedding wasn't much, but the reception was fantastic. I like my emotions like my water, bottled up.
You're watching? Well, I thought it was funny Saturday morning cartoon show.
My wife asked me to take a spider out instead of killing it, so I brought him out for a bite to eat and a few drinks, and I gotta say he's a really cool dude. I went to see a theatrical performance on puns the other day. Turns out it was just a play on words. What do you call friends that you like to eat with? Taste buds. Oh, I ate 4 cans of expired Alphagetti. My next trip to the washroom could spell disaster. What's the difference between hockey and wrestling? In hockey, the fights are real. I was going to try an all-almond diet, but then I realized that's just nuts. Why did the phone get glasses? Because it lost its contacts. If we ever have twin daughters, I want to name one Kate and the other one Duplicate. What's the best present you could give anybody? A broken drum set. You can't beat that. Yeah, I talk to myself occasionally. Like when I need expert advice. I told my psychologist that I had a terrible fear of living in tall buildings. He told me I had something he calls an apartment complex. Last night as I lay in bed, staring up at the stars, a question came to me. Where the heck is my roof? What days are the strongest? Saturday and Sunday. All the rest are just weekdays. I found a wooden shoe in my toilet today. It was clogged. What do you call a zombified piece of toast? The unbread. My neighbor could no longer afford his water bill, so I sent him a get well card. You know, last year I had a great joke about inflation, but it's pretty much worthless now. Why don't penguins like rock music? Because they only like soul. Everybody knows where the Big Apple is. I want to know where the Mini Apple is. Spiders are the only web developers that like finding bugs. When my high school music teacher heard me sing, she said I should be a tenor. 10 or more feet away from any microphone. My wife asked me to put the toilet seat down. I'm not sure why I was carrying it around anyways. What do cakes and baseball have in common? They both require a batter. What do you call the rough part of a town in Italy? The spaghetto. Where do the pumpkins have their meeting? In the gourd room. I saw an ad that read, used radio, excellent shape, except volume stuck on full, $1. And I thought to myself, I can't turn that down. I'm thinking about throwing out my glasses and never wearing them again. I've seen enough.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com.
My wife says I'm the cheapest person that she knows. I'm not buying it. I want to be a millionaire just like my dad. He wanted to be a millionaire too. A week ago I opened the refrigerator and a tub of margarine fell out and landed on my foot, and it still hurts this morning. I can't believe it's not better. Well, that was bad news. My reality check just bounced. When I moved into my new igloo, my friends threw a housewarming party. Yeah, thanks, jerks. Now I'm homeless. My wife left me because I'm just too insecure. Oh, never mind. She just went to the store. What do you call a bear that gets caught in a rainstorm? A drizzly bear. Why did the dumb guy write TGIF on his shoes? Toes go in first. Some people say I'm too vague, but you know how the saying goes. Did you know Stephen King has a son named Joe? I'm not joking, but he is. What did the biologist wear to impress his date? Designer jeans. These bad jokes are all I have. You might say I'm dad inside. 19 and 20 got into a fight. 21. What do Alexander the Great and Winnie the Pooh have in common? The same middle name. Why did the Energizer Bunny go to jail? He was charged with battery. Some guy just walked up to me and said, salad tongs, pinchers, forceps. And I'm like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Turns out he was speaking in tongs. What's green and has wheels? Grass. I lied about the wheels. People used to call me self-centered, but enough about them. I got a pet tree. It's a bit like having a pet dog, but its bark is not nearly as loud. What did one hat say to the other? You stay here, I'll go on ahead. What's the single hardest trick to land as a skateboard? Getting a job. I applied for a job installing mirrors in washrooms. You know, it's something I could really see myself doing. What do you call a group of very disorganized cats? A catastrophe. How did the picture end up in prison? It was framed. Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. Two peanuts walk into a bar. One was assaulted. Why did the phone start wearing glasses? It lost all of its contacts. I was hit by a falling book this morning. I only have my shelf to blame. What do you call a cow that was grazing on pot? High stakes. You know, technically, cattle farmers are always raising the stakes. Why did the frog take the bus to work? His car got towed. I got mugged yesterday. I guess it must be the first robin of spring. I got fired from my job at the bank on Friday. An old lady came in and asked me to check her balance, so I pushed her over. A guy walks into a bar and suffers a minor concussion. My therapist says I have a preoccupation with revenge. We'll see about that. My wife is furious at the neighbor who sunbathes naked in her yard. Me, personally, I'm on the fence. I went to a restaurant run by kleptomaniacs. The waiter took my order. I wrote a mini-series about flying commercial aircraft. We're filming the pilot now. Our local Renaissance fair can't afford to hire knights this year for the jousting competition, so now they're looking for freelancers. I started a new exercise routine. Every day I do 100 diddly squats. The local ice company lost power at their main factory. They had to liquidate their assets. So Fred Flintstone broke in, yelled yabba dab, and then left without further ado. After playing guitar for years, I thought I would try piano. Turns out that's one tough instrument to pick up. Why did the deer go to the dentist? Because he had buck teeth. I'm on a whiskey diet. I've lost 3 days already. Why can't dinosaurs clap their hands? Because they're extinct. When my dad dies, he wants me to become a circus clown just like he was and just like his father was before him. I don't know though. Those are some big shoes to fill. Do you think the person that came up with the idea for the York peppermint patty was sitting around thinking, you know what would go great with chocolate? Toothpaste. Parallel lines have so much in common, it's just a shame that they'll never meet. Why was the baby jalapeno shivering? Because he was a little chilly. I got lost in my thoughts yesterday. I was in unfamiliar territory. What do you call a dog that does magic tricks? A labracadabrador. What do you call a potato wearing glasses? A spectator. I've discovered the secret of getting in touch with yourself, folks. Unfortunately, it involves using cheap one-ply toilet paper. I asked the librarian if they had any books on paranoia, and she said, they're right behind you. I used to be into Egyptian archaeology. At least that was until I discovered it was all one big pyramid scheme. I'll go with that one. A pirate walks into a bar with a paper towel on his head, sits down at the bar, orders a dirty rum. The bartender comes up, gives him his drink, and says, I got a question for you. What's with the paper towel? The pirate says, Arr, somebody put a bounty on me head. Why did the hairdresser win the race? She knew a shortcut. Why don't ghosts go out in the rain? Because it dampens their spirits. The folks that came up with the phrases, a penny for your thoughts, don't nickel and dime me, and another day, another dollar really knew how to coin a phrase. I bought a head of lettuce from a grocery store called Mama's and Papa's, but I can't eat it. All the leaves are brown. That book was so good, I decided to write my own book on glue, but I'm stuck on the first chapter. Why couldn't the sesame seed stop talking? Because he was on a roll. Swarms of flying insects recently invaded our city. The mayor called for the SWAT team. Nowadays, Lance is not a common name, but in medieval times, people were called Lance a lot. What's the hardest type of tea to swallow? Reality. Apparently Humpty Dumpty had a terrible winter. It's too bad, though, because I heard he had a great fall. I've been trying to quit cold turkey for over 2 years, but every time I tell people that I'm trying to quit cold turkey, they don't take me seriously. Ladies, if he doesn't appreciate your puns about fruit, it's time to let that man go. I just got home to find all my windows open and everything inside stolen. Now, why would somebody eat my advent calendar? My cloning experiments finally paid off. I'm so excited, I'm beside myself. Did you know that the shortest distance between two jokes is a straight line? What's the difference between in-laws and outlaws? Well, outlaws are wanted. I was married by a judge. I should have asked for a jury. Does anyone remember that joke about my spine? It was about a week back. How do you make an octopus laugh? With 10 tickles. How does a penguin make pancakes? With its flippers. I was going to tell you a great joke about construction, but I'm still working on it. What's brown and sticky? A stick.
Good evening, ladies and germs. You are watching, well, I thought it was funny TV.
My wife was sad, so I showed her my boobs. Apparently it doesn't work both ways. I have a friend who's a detective, but works as an electrician in his part-time. I like to refer to him as Sherlock Holmes. I spend 500% of my time exaggerating. Don't use double negatives. They're a big no-no. My wife asked me if I saw the dog bowl. I told her I didn't even know he could. What do penguins drink in the summer? Iced tea. My friend got home last night to find out that somebody broke in and stole every single light bulb in his house. That's right, he was delighted. I'm on a whiskey diet. I've lost 3 days already. Women definitely mature faster than men. They get their boobs at around the age of 14. We get ours at about the age of 45. I dated a girl once who stopped an F1 race due to unsafe conditions. I'm pretty sure that's a red flag. What's brown and sounds like a bell? Dung! Did you know that an antelope can jump higher than a 2-story building? This comes from the fact that they have very powerful legs and buildings can't jump. Where did the cat go after losing its tail? To the retail store. A week ago, I opened the refrigerator and a tub of margarine fell out and landed on my foot. And it still hurts this morning. I can't believe it's not better. I haven't been to the gym for so long that I've started calling it James. Why can't a leopard hide? Because he's always spotted. I dig. You dig. He digs. She digs. We dig. They dig. It's not a very long poem, but it sure is deep. So what if I don't know what the word Armageddon means? It's not like it's the end of the world or something. I gave a presentation on wind power yesterday. It was a breeze. My wife didn't take my name when we got married. We thought it might be confusing with both of us named Lee. What do you call a rude cow? Beef jerky. I hired supernatural house cleaners. They call themselves the Ghost Dusters. Why do bees stay in their hive during winter? They swarm. There are two types of people in this world. Avoid them both. I stayed at a haunted bed and breakfast in France. That place really gave me the creeps. Pinocchio's had no luck on the dating apps recently, but what can you expect? He's looking for a relationship with no strings attached. What do you call a cow that plays guitar? A musician. Why weren't the sailors able to play cards? Because the captain was standing on the deck. I just saw a car being driven by a sheep in a freaking bathing suit. I think it was a Lamborghini. Why did Adele cross the road? She wanted to say hello from the other side. I was sitting on the back porch when I suddenly blurted out, "I love you." And my wife turned to me and goes, "Is that you or the beer talking?" I said, "It's me talking to my beer." How did the skeleton know it was about to rain? He could feel it in his bones. I found a wooden shoe in my toilet. It was clogged. I've got two friends, a dentist and a manicurist, who got married. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. They fought tooth and nail. I had a dream I was floating on an ocean of orange soda. I guess it's what you would call a fantasy. What do you call a moose with no name? A non-a-moose. Why don't horses ever get divorced? Because they have stable relationships. A man walks into a bar with a parrot on his shoulder, and the bartender says, "Does the animal talk?" And the bird says, "I don't know." I've got a new pen that can write underwater. It can write a bunch of other words, too.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com.
This morning, Siri said to me, "Don't call me Shirley." That's when I realized I left my phone in airplane mode. Why do flamingos stand on one leg? Well, if they lifted the other one up, they'd just fall over. Why didn't the skeleton climb the mountain? He didn't have the guts. Just curious, but do I need a passport to eat at the International House of Pancakes? At least I know I can always count on my fingers. Did you hear about the professional poker player that broke his arm? He's having trouble dealing with it. Why can't you tell a kleptomaniac a joke? Because they take everything literally. What do you call a priest who becomes a lawyer? A father-in-law. I wanted to marry a carbon-14 specialist, but all she wanted to do was date. Why do so many tennis players get divorced? Well, love means nothing to them. Leopards hate playing hide and seek. It's because they're always spotted. My aunt used to always say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. She was a great lady, but a horrible surgeon. I bought a smart toaster, and now it gives me crummy opinions on my breakfast choices. I broke my finger last week, but on the other hand, I'm all right. What do you call it when you mix classic American literature with alcohol? Tequila Mockingbird. I go to the gym religiously. About twice a year around the holidays. My doctor told me I should cut down on my sodium intake. I took her advice with a grain of salt. My wife thinks I'm addicted to brake fluid, but I know I can stop at any time. What do you get when you divide a jack-o'-lantern's circumference by its diameter? You get pumpkin pie. I came from a real tough neighborhood. Once a guy pulled a knife on me. I could tell right away he was an amateur. There was still butter on it. What do you call an Italian abominable snowman that really likes pasta? The spaghetti. I accidentally got ketchup in my eyes yesterday at dinner. Now I've got hindsight. I just found out that the company that makes yardsticks won't be making them any longer. I've got a friend whose hobby is collecting calendars. In fact, the hobby...
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com.
How did the egg climb the mountain? It scrambled up. If I'm reading lips correctly, my neighbors are arguing about some creepy guy next door. What kind of cars do cats drive? Cadillacs. I got mugged by 6 dwarves last night. Not happy. I recently came to find out that somebody stole the 5th month out of all of my calendars. I've been dismayed ever since. My wife asked me, what starts with F and ends in K? And I turned to her, no it doesn't. I've got a pen that writes underwater. I mean, it writes a whole bunch of other words, but it writes underwater. Indecisive is my favorite word. Oh, wait, no, it isn't. I built a model of Mount Everest, and my buddy asked me if it was to scale. I said, what are you, stupid? Look how small it is. It's to look at. My wife says I've got 2 really big faults. I don't listen, and something else. I'm not sure what she said. My extra sensitive toothpaste gets upset when I use other toothpastes. What do you call a detective crocodile? An investigator. Why do bananas use sunscreen? Because they peel. What does a painter do when he gets cold? Puts on another coat. Did you know that Saturday and Sunday are the strongest days? That's right. Monday through Friday are just weekdays. Want people to start paying attention to you? Try jogging without moving your arms. I accidentally used dog shampoo this morning. I'm feeling like such a good boy. Such a good boy. How much does it cost to run Santa's sleigh for one night? $8. Unless the weather's bad, then $9. Why don't all couples go to the gym together? Because not all relationships work out. While we're on the subject of pirates, how much does a pirate cost to get his ears pierced? A buccaneer. I used to be indecisive, but now I'm not so sure. I hate Russian dolls. So full of themselves. Why was the broom late for work? It overswept.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com. Why don't you ever see a headline like, Psychic wins the lottery? A toothless termite walks into a bar, taps a patron on the shoulder, and says, excuse me, buddy, can you tell me where the bar's tender? How do you make a skeleton laugh? Tickle his funny bone. You know, the problem with candy jokes is they're either too sweet or too corny.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com.
How many drinks before you cut off a bird? 2 cans. What do you call 500 penguins in Trafalgar Square? Lost. I used to work at a donut shop, and one time some guy came up to the counter and he was yelling at me about how I ripped him off. I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I ordered a dozen donuts and I got an empty bag." And I took the bag from him and I looked in and I said, "Sir, there's clearly an infinite number of donut holes in this bag. You, sir, got a good deal." And I handed it back to him. Breaking news! Police have discovered that the man who fell off a local nightclub was not a bouncer. I tried smoking a salmon once, but I couldn't keep the damn thing lit. What's red and bad for your teeth? A brick. I used to date a girl with a lazy eye. Turns out she was seeing somebody else the whole time. My friend told me he was a compulsive liar, but I don't believe him. I'm not using Amazon anymore. I ordered grain for my chickens, and then a week after I got it, I get an email asking for my feedback. What do you call a pony with a sore throat? A little horse. A cheeseburger walks into a bar. The bartender says, "I'm sorry, we don't serve food here." You know, if you spell drawer backwards, you're going to get a reward. I was sitting in front of my computer when I muttered to myself that I need a break. Now that thing won't stop sending me ads for Kit Kats. What does a gingerbread use when he breaks his leg? A candy cane. I toured a postcard factory this week. It was alright, nothing to write home about. A dung beetle walks into the bar and says, "Is this stool taken?" Do you think it would kill avocado manufacturers to maybe put a different toy in them once in a while? Listen, I've got 50 of those stupid wooden toy balls. Where do bad rainbows go? To Prism. It's a light sentence, but it gives them time to reflect. Well, my doctor told me my prostate was good. I was deeply touched. The cashier said strip down facing me. How was I supposed to know she was talking about my debit card? There was an industrial accident last week in town when a man fell into an upholstery machine. He's since made a full recovery. What did the blanket say to the bed? "I've got you covered." Why did Waldo go to therapy? To find himself, of course. A group of thugs broke into a local police station and smashed all the toilets. Police may not have much luck catching them, as they have nothing to go on. If a two-way radio is called a walkie-talkie, why can't we call a vacuum cleaner a pushy-sucky? Why are shopping centers boring? Because if you've seen one, you've seen them all. My friend said he managed to glue himself to his autobiography. I don't believe him, but that's his story and he's sticking to it. My buddy told me he hadn't talked to his wife in a week. He said he was afraid to interrupt her. What did the O say to the 8? Hey, nice belt. Why did the cat fear the tree? Because of its bark. Where do sheep go on vacation? To the Bahamas. I don't know about you, but the rotation of the earth really makes my day. I am so glad I don't have to hunt for my food. I don't even know where sandwiches live. Did you know that it's impossible to breathe through your nose while smiling? Ha! Made you smile. Why was the baby jalapeno shivering? He was a little chilly. A friend of mine quit his job at the gym because he was really embarrassed that he couldn't bench press more than 75 pounds. He had to put in his 2-week notice. Making puns about golf is the worst kind of foreplay. I found a wooden shoe in my toilet today. It was clogged. My buddy got home last night to find out that somebody broke into his place and stole every single light bulb in the house. He was delighted. What do you call it when a hen stares at lettuce? A chicken sees her salad. Ha ha ha! What's the easiest building to lift? A lighthouse. What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One's very heavy, and the other one's a little lighter. I started a business that specializes in weighing tiny objects. It's what you might call a small-scale operation. There's somebody at my work stealing iPhones. Eventually they'll FaceTime. I'm opening a bakery that only sells bagels and donuts. I'm calling it Whole Foods. If you think time travel is a hassle now, wait till next Wednesday. Did ya hear about the cheese factory that exploded in Paris? Debris was everywhere. Once upon a time, there was a king who was only 12 inches tall. He was a terrible king, but he was a great ruler. I lost my mood ring the other day, and I don't know how I feel about that. Why are penguin shops always so busy? Because the fish fillet. What do you call a slow bullet? A slug. I won an award for being the most secretive person in the office. I can't tell you how much it means to me. Years ago, I made the decision to move into an igloo. Everything was great until my friends showed up and threw me a housewarming party and left me homeless. What do you call a sad berry? A blueberry. I entered a pun contest about clocks. It's about time. I really have to lose some weight before I go back to the beach. Last summer, I went swimming and the Coast Guard reported me as a Russian sub. Did you hear about the broken guitar for sale? It comes with no strings attached. What's worse than finding a worm in your apple? Finding half a worm in your apple. Why can't you borrow money from a leprechaun? They're always a little short. On that note, I think a coffin would be a terrible gift. It's the last thing a person needs. I bought a sweet car online. It was owned by Neil Diamond. My wife didn't take my name when we got married. We thought it might be confusing with both of us named Lee. You know, the fact that some people can't distinguish between etymology and entomology bugs me in ways I can't put into words. Why do melons have large weddings? Well, why not? They can't elope. There was an industrial accident yesterday when a man fell into a upholstery machine. They're expected to make a full recovery. Why didn't the jalapeno practice archery? Because it didn't have an arrow. I taught myself to juggle clocks. My wife says it's just more proof that I have way too much time on my hands. A tombstone with a typo is what you call a grave mistake. Man, I can't wait till I'm done telling these jokes. I've got a package of lifesavers and the next flavor is pineapple. That reminds me. What's another word for thesaurus? What's the difference between a dirty bus stop and a lobster with breast implants? One's a crusty bus station, the other one's a busty crustacean. Why did Waldo go to therapy? To find himself. Did you hear about the famous pickle? Yeah, he's a really big deal. I've got an addiction to brake fluid, but I can stop anytime I want. I told my psychologist that I had a terrible fear of living in tall buildings. He told me I had something he calls an apartment complex. Why do aliens always spill their tea? Because they've got flying saucers. Why do birds fly south in the winter? That's way too far for them to walk. Folks, it's time to stop looking for the perfect match. Just use a lighter. A dung beetle walks into a bar and says, "Is this stool taken?" What do you call a penguin that can't win? A peng-lose. I got this new tartar-controlled toothpaste. I still got tartar, but boy, that stuff is under control. You know, I really love the word plethora. It means a lot to me. What do you call a bear with no socks on? Barefoot. The Invisible Man and the Invisible Woman got married. Their kids were not much to look at. What's blue and doesn't weigh very much? Light blue. My wife asked me, "Is it me or is the cat getting fat?" Well, apparently it's just you is not the right answer. I read that exercise helps a person with decision making, and you know what? It's true. I went jogging yesterday and I immediately decided I'm not doing this again. I make my own pizza dough. I'd love to see it top that. What kind of shoes do frogs wear? Open-toed. You know, ever since I can remember, I've wanted to go back to bed. Did you hear about the girl who swallowed a frog? We're pretty sure she's gonna croak. What did the ocean say to the beach? Nothing. It just waved. When I die, I want my ashes pressed into a record and that record played at my wake. Let's just call that my vinyl request. You know, every time you clog a toilet, you've exceeded somebody's expectations. What do you call a nut with facial hair? A mustachio. It's important to establish a good vocabulary. For example, if I had known the difference between antidote and anecdote, my best friend would still be alive today. I just can't understand those guys with 3 or 4 wives. I've got one and that's too much sometimes. I'm so sorry, Wendy. I love you so much. I rushed into my doctor's office and yelled, "Doc, you gotta help me, I'm shrinking." He says, "You gotta hold on. Be a little patient." Did you know that studies show that cows produce way more milk when a farmer talks to them? It's a case of in one ear, out the other. My problem with horses is that they're all naysayers. You know, great hide-and-seek players are really hard to find. I invented a new kind of marker that only works when you whisper. I call it a Sharpie. I think one of the best presents you could get anyone is a broken drum. I mean, it's really hard to beat. I don't think it's wrong to occasionally date a nun. Just don't get into the habit. I was in the process of writing some awkwardly worded sonnets the other day when I was stopped by the grammar police, and I was forced to produce my poetic license. Getting mythology wrong is my Hercules ankle. Well, I just got fired yesterday, and on the way out the door, my ex-manager hands me a bag of ex-coffee. I said, "What's this for?" And he says, "It's your grounds for termination." My wife has been reading a lot of gothic horror romance novels lately, so I asked her, "Why does Dracula always bite his victims on the neck?" And she says, "Well, it's simple. He's a neck romancer." Years ago, I was driving a girl home after a date when I explained to her that I'm not really good with directions. Well, she found that funny and started laughing, and I took offense. So I stopped the car, I told her to get out, and I write her on the spot. My friend Pete thinks he was reincarnated. We call him Repeat. I, for one, like Roman numerals. His ex was a whiskey maker, but he loved her still. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because I am the absolute best at putting leaves in boiling water. It's my specialty. According to my therapist, I have trouble vocalizing my emotions. I can't say that I'm surprised. I accidentally used dog shampoo this morning. I'm feeling like such a good boy. Such a good boy. Somebody just threw a jar of mayonnaise at me, and I was like, what the hell, man? Why are frogs always happy? Because they eat anything that bugs them. Did you hear that the first French fries weren't actually cooked in France? No, they were cooked in Greece. Why do sharks swim in salt water? Because pepper water makes them sneeze. What's the favorite genre of music for serious golfers? Swing! What do you call a crocodile detective? An investigator. Why did the police arrest the chicken? They suspected foul play. A detective showed up at my house today, asked me where I was between 5 and 6, and I told him, school. And to be more specific, Mrs. Miller's grade 1 class. How did the phone propose to its girlfriend? He gave her a ring. Did you hear about the crusher? He couldn't control his pupils. My life coach just called. I didn't make the team. Why did the Scarecrow win the Nobel Peace Prize? Because he was outstanding in his field. A woman was on trial for stealing guitars when the judge asked, first offender? When the prosecution stood up and said, no, first a Gibson, then a Fender. You know why anteaters rarely get sick? They're full of antibodies. A man went into a woman's clothing store to buy his wife a new bra. He sought the help of a sales lady who asked him, bust? And he said, no, I think it just wore out. What do you call friends who listen to music together? Earbuds. What's the worst thing about being an egg? Well, to start off with, you only get laid once. I just boarded a plane and was mistaken for the pilot. Guess I'm gonna have to wing it. What did the penguin get from the genie? 3 fishes. I have a friend who writes songs about sewing machines. That's right, he's a singer-songwriter. When my Uncle Frank died, his wishes were to be cremated and have his ashes buried in his favorite beer mug. That's right, he wanted to go out as a Frankenstein. What do you get when you cross a bison with a duck? Buffalo Bill.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughtitwasfunny.com.
Why did the spider go to school? He was studying to be a web designer. What did the horse say when it tripped? Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up. A new report says that people eat more bananas than monkeys. But I gotta be honest, I've never seen anyone eat a monkey. What did Benjamin Franklin say upon discovering electricity? Nothing. He was too shocked. I made a movie about a glass jug. It was nominated for Best Picture. I gave my handyman a to-do list, but he only completed jobs 1, 3, and 5. Turns out he only does odd jobs. Eye drops are technically blinker fluid. If a butcher shop clerk is 5 foot 10 inches tall and has size 13 shoes, what does he weigh? Meat. The doctor just prescribed me some anti-gloating cream. I can't wait to rub it in.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
What do you call somebody who raises hens? A chicken tender. The wife of a doctor called the casino and asked him to page her husband. They refused. The house doesn't make doctor calls. My grief counselor died. It was so good that I don't even care. I just found out that the company that makes meter sticks won't be making them any longer. Speaking of Freudian slips, they should never be confused with Freudian bras and panties. What do you call it when two mummies fart at the same time? Toot in common. I hate it when I gain 10 pounds for a role and then realize I'm not an actor.
They say money talks, but all I've ever heard mine say is goodbye.
As a kid, I was forced to walk the plank. Oh, we couldn't afford a dog. What's the difference between a poorly dressed man on a bicycle and an expensively dressed man on a unicycle? Attire. Who buys the most Barbies worldwide? Australian fathers. I have not slept for 10 days because that would be way too long. Is a line of men waiting for a haircut called a barbecue? A man has been stealing wheels off the local police cars. The cops have been working tirelessly to find him. Nowadays, investing in people is riskier than the stock market. Did you know that if you took a blue whale and laid it across a football field, you'd have no choice but to cancel the game? Do you think people in electric cars listen to AC/DC, or is it something more current? My parents used to say, son, to bring you up, we had to make a lot of sacrifices. It's because they were druids. My boss came up to me at the end of my shift and says, where the heck have you been? I've been looking for you all day. And that's when I told him, hey, a good employee is hard to find. I knew a thief that was so bad at crime that we all called him the common cold because he was so easy to catch. 7 days without a pun makes 1 week. Two antennas met on a roof, fell in love, and got married. The wedding wasn't much, but the reception was fantastic. I love jokes about eyes. The cornea the better. What do you call a hen that counts her own eggs? A math-ma-chicken. My friend got home last night to find out that somebody broke in and stole every single light bulb in his house. That's right, he was delighted. Bananas are never lonely. I mean, what can you expect? They hang out in bunches. I noticed the police officer was crying while writing my ticket, and I asked her, what's wrong? And she said, it's a moving violation. If athletes get athlete's foot, what do astronauts get? Mistletoe. What do you call a zombie that still cooks stir fries? A dead man walking. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils. Did you know that the swordfish has no natural enemies except for the penfish, which of course is mightier? I took the shell off my racing snail thinking it would make him a bit faster. Now he's just sluggish. I used to have a fear of speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over it. I just bought a knife that can slice through 4 loaves of bread at once. That's right, it's a 4-loaf cleaver. Why can't T-Rexes clap their hands? Because they're extinct. I changed my iPod's name to Titanic. It's sinking now. 2 penguin friends meet up, and one says to the other, have you heard that they named a biscuit after us? And the other one says to him, goes, what, Fred and Terry? I've decided to take something for my kleptomania. What is a mummy's favorite type of music? Rap. A man who sued an airline over his missing valise has lost his case. Why shouldn't you write a book on penguins? Because writing a book on paper is much, much easier. What does a clock do when it's hungry? Goes back for seconds. What's red and bad for your teeth? A brick. If a pig loses its voice, does it become disgruntled? You know, a lot of spouses say their husband never listens to them. Well, I am proud to say I've never heard my wife say that. You know, I saw a little person climbing over a prison wall yesterday, and I thought, that's a little condescending. So what if I don't know what the word Armageddon means? It's not like it's the end of the world or something. I just got out of the hospital after a bad peekaboo incident. They had me in the ICU. Get your coffee cups, shirts, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. I still have my great-grandmother in my contacts. I think we should have waited for a less windy day to spread her ashes. I'm beginning to think that the book I ordered, How to Scam People Online, has got lost in the mail. You know, and I'm pissed. I spent $800 on that. I'm not saying that I'm old, but I will say that dinner time and bedtime are getting real close together. My new car has a button for everything. In fact, there's one that's even labeled rear wiper. Now, I've been afraid to try that one, though. Helvetica and Times New Roman walk into a bar. The bartender shouts, "Hey, we don't serve your type here." Two windmills are sitting on a hill, and one says to the other one, "Do you like music?" And the other one says, "Well, I've always been a big metal fan." Running into stationary objects can be painful, at least according to a recent poll. What goes vroom, screech, vroom, screech, vroom, screech? A dumb guy at a flashing red light. I used to play piano by ear, but I am so much better now that I use my hands. Why did Adele cross the road? She wanted to say hello from the other side. I accidentally spilled a bucket of paint on my boss. Boy, was his face blue. What's the difference between a jeweler and a jailer? One sells watches, the other one watches sells. How do you think the unthinkable? With an iceberg. Well, I just got my doctor's tests back. Turns out I'm not smart enough to be a doctor. What do you call a teacher that only farts in public? A private tutor. Sunday sure can be sad, but the day before is always the Saturday. I heard a guy that lost his whole left side in a horrible accident. He's all right now. A week before Grandpa died, I gave him a snowboard. He went downhill fast after that. What do sprinters eat before a race? Nothing. They fast. What do you call it when a cow grows facial hair? A moustache. Not many people know this, but Dr. Seuss's mother was a massage therapist. That's right, she was known as Masseuse. You know, they say that money talks, but all mine's ever said was, goodbye. What do you call a moose with no name? Anonymous. Why are elevator jokes the funniest? Because they work on so many different levels. I can tell when someone's being judgmental just by looking at them. How do you milk sheep? Release another iPhone. What do you get when you cross a vampire with a snowman? Frostbite. What does garlic do when it gets hot? It takes its cloves off. You know, it really kind of bugs me when I see a business that I've had bad dealings with and got no satisfaction advertise that they're under new management. It's like, I've been telling you those guys are jerks for years. Before you marry someone, you should first make them use a computer with a slow internet connection to find out who they really are. There was an accident just up the street from here involving an ice cream truck. Nothing to worry about, though. They had the area coned off. How do you get down from an elephant? You don't. You get down from a goose. A guy asked me, "Where did your sister go hunting?" And I told him, Alaska. Because forget it, I'll ask her myself. And the skies are gray. Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. My dad once told me he once missed class due to hypothermia. Yeah, he said he was too cool for school. Did you hear the one about the teenager who failed his driving test? He thought it was a crash course. Common sense is like deodorant. The people that need it the most use it the least. In Boston, what's the only color that can open your car door? Khaki. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Our local Renaissance fair doesn't have the money to hire knights for the jousting competition, so now they're advertising for freelancers. For the last 5 years, every morning I announce that I'm going for a jog, but I don't. It's my longest running joke. Did you know that there's a new dating app for bald people and it's free? That's right, you don't need to pay. My wife asked me why I brought a suitcase to the kitchen. I kindly explained that I was packing a lunch. My boss told me to dress for the job I want, not the job I have. So tomorrow I'm going as Batman. Fun fact, Australia's biggest export is boomerangs, and it's also their biggest import. I bought a new pair of camouflage pants, but ever since bringing them home, I can't seem to find them. If running late was considered exercise, I'd be an Olympic athlete. I asked my fridge how it was feeling. It said, "I'm cool. I'm just chilling." What's E.T. short for? Well, it's because he's got tiny legs. I may be old, but I've still got it. I just can't remember where I put it. How do you make an octopus laugh? With tentacles. What's the difference between a good joke and a bad joke? Timing. What's the best way to make a band stand? Take away their chairs. I spent a lot of time, effort, and money childproofing my home, and yet my kids still managed to get in. Scientists recently combined the DNA of a cheetah with the DNA of a crab. Things went sideways fast. I knew a guy who was afraid of hurdles. He got over it. Why are frogs great at baseball? Because they're used to catching flies. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils. 3 years ago, there was a small knock at my door in the middle of the night. I opened the door to find a snail. Disgusted, I picked it up and I threw it. Last night, there was another small knock at my door. I opened up the door and there's the snail and he says to me, "Hey, what the hell was that about?" One moment, folks, we are getting breaking news. Authorities have confirmed that the man who fell from an 18-story nightclub last night was not a bouncer. My neighbor asked me to help him install a new ceiling fan. When he turned it on, he was shocked to find out that I'm not a very good electrician. My parents raised me as an only child, which really pissed off my younger brother. Did you hear about NASA planning on sending cleaners into outer space? Yeah, they scrubbed the mission. The dry erase board is the most remarkable of inventions. I was in a restaurant and I asked the waiter, will my pizza be long? Because no, sir, it's most likely going to be round. I arrived at the restaurant a little earlier than my reservation, and the manager asked me, do you mind waiting a bit? And I said, no. He said, good. Can you take this tray of drinks to table 9? I gave up cross-country skiing. It's been all downhill since. I went to a silent auction. I won 2 dog whistles and a mime. Geology rocks, but geography is where it's at. What language do billboards use when they talk to each other? Sign language. I will find the person who stole my copy of Microsoft Office. You have my word. To the man who stole my identity, who the hell do you think you are? I tried writing a note with a broken pencil once, but it was pointless. Why was the jack-o'-lantern afraid? Because it had no guts. You know, I was tired yesterday, and I'm tired today. So, does that make me retired? Did you hear about the actor who fell through the floorboards? Apparently he was just going through a stage. What do you call a sad berry? A blueberry. What do you call a detective that accidentally solves all of his cases? Sherlock Holmes. What do you call it when you mix classic American literature with alcohol? Tequila Mockingbird. A dung beetle walks into a bar and says, "Is this stool taken?" A group of chess enthusiasts had just checked into a hotel and were standing around the lobby, just bragging over and over about their recent victories. Eventually, the manager came out of his office and asked them to disperse. They asked him why, and he said, "I can't stand chestnuts." I've learned that if my wife says she'll be ready in 15 minutes, then she'll be ready in 15 minutes. There's no reason for me to hound her every half hour. Why shouldn't you tell secrets in a cornfield? Too many ears around. I bought some shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day. Why should you wear glasses in math class? Because it helps with division. What's silver and can't climb a tree? My refrigerator. I used to just procrastinate, but I got so good I decided to go pro. I think the opposite of ladyfingers might be Mentos. My friends and I started a band called Comforter. We're a cover band. Tums is really missing out on not selling pumpkin spice antacids. They could market them as Autumns. After all these years, my wife still thinks I'm sexy. Every time I walk past her, she says, "What an ass." 100 years ago, 2 brothers claimed they could fly. They were right. Why don't ants get sick? 'Cause they got little antibodies. What do you call 2 friends that love math? Algebros. What happened when the man crashed his expensive car? He found out how a Mercedes really bends. Last week I opened the refrigerator and a tub of margarine fell out and landed on my foot. It still hurts this morning. I can't believe it's not better. My wallet is like an onion. Every time I open it, it brings tears to my eyes. A man assaulted me with milk, butter, and cheese. How dare he? You know, I've never owned a telescope, but it's something I've been thinking about looking into. You know, not to brag, but I've got a knack for figuring out what's inside a wrapped present. You might call it a gift. What's the difference between a black-eyed pea and a chickpea? A black-eyed pea can sing us a song, but a chickpea can only hum us one. I've read that if you encounter a bear in the wild, the best thing that you could do is lay down and play dead. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds suspiciously like something a bear would say. I just found out that I'm colorblind. I mean, that news came right out of the purple. What do you call a boomerang that won't come back? A stick. What's a scientist's favorite breed of dog? Corgis. I bet you thought I was going to say lab. Did you hear about the professional poker player that broke his arm? He's having trouble dealing with it. I lost my job at Pepsi last week after working there for years. I tested positive for Coke. Get your coffee cups, shirts, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. This morning I got up and folded my bed back into a couch. I nearly broke both of my arms. It's not that kind of bed. I just got a pet termite. I called him Clint. Clint eats wood. Without a doubt, my favorite Robin Williams film is Mrs. Fire. Seen it all, done it all. Can't remember most of it. What is a fancy fish called? Sophisticated. I'm not OCD, but you can count on me to turn your toilet paper the right way around. Why should you never take sides at an argument at the dinner table? That's a trick question. That's exactly when you take sides. No one's paying attention. Bring Tupperware. I always wear a stethoscope when I leave the house. That way, during medical emergencies, I can teach an important lesson about making assumptions. Why did the deer go to the dentist? He had buck teeth. Our wedding was so beautiful, even the cake was in tears. This morning, Siri said to me, "Don't call me Shirley." That's when I realized I left my phone in airplane mode. I've read that no two people see colors the same way. Apparently, they're just pigments of our imagination.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com.
The recipe said set the oven to 180 degrees. Well, now I can't open it because the door is facing the wall. I put pineapple on everything. People think it's weird, but it's Hawaii roll. I heard there's a new dating app starting up in Prague. It's called Checkmate. I found a mouse in the bottom of my McDonald's coffee. Turns out someone tried to slip me a Mickey. Two sheep walk into a bar. I'm not lazy. I'm just on energy savings mode. I called my wife to tell her I saw a fox on the way to work. She asked me how I knew it was on its way to work. I just hung up. My wife accused me of being immature. I kicked her out of my Ford after that. I know a guy terrified of escalators. He takes steps to avoid them. Did you know that the swordfish has no natural enemies except for the penfish, which is, of course, mightier? Anybody need an ark? I know a guy. I poured some water over a duck's back yesterday. I don't think he cared. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere. How did the picture end up in prison? It was framed. I've got a great joke about cliffhangers. I suggested to my wife that she embrace her mistakes, and she gave me the biggest hug. I heard on the news that a man was seriously injured in a peekaboo accident. He was rushed to the ICU. What do you call a wizard who's good with ceramics? Harry Pottery. When I become king of the world, I'm going to repeal the law of gravity. It sucks. Or does it pull? Have you heard of quiet tennis? It's like regular tennis, but without the racket. I don't usually joke about hard liquor, but I'll give it a shot. What's Forrest Gump's password? 1 Forrest 1! My grandfather was a conductor. He didn't build a bridge or drive a train or anything. He was struck by lightning. What does it mean when the barometer falls? It means you probably need a new nail to hold it up. You know, I used to think I was indecisive, but now I'm not so sure. Wow, my neighbor just reshingled my roof for free. Said it's on the house. I was invited out for what I thought was a meal of pulled pork. Well, I'll never fall for that again. It was an evening of pulled my finger pork. How do penguins take their drinks? On the rocks. I can always tell when somebody's lying just by looking at them. I can also tell when they're standing. You know, I'd give my right arm to be ambidextrous. Why did Waldo go to therapy? To find himself. I'm no good at math, but it makes me feel better to know that 5 out of 4 people are also not good at math. I've learned so much from my mistakes that I plan on making a few more. What do you call a detective crocodile? An investigator. How do you get a snowboarder off your front step? Pay for the pizza. I started a company that sells see-through glass coffins. Will it be a success? I guess it remains to be seen. You know what's remarkable? Whiteboards. I ate a kid's meal at McDonald's yesterday. Boy, was his mom angry. How do bees get to school? They take the school buzz. I was on a jungle tour when I noticed that one of the guides had a lizard on his shoulder that was telling jokes. And I turned to the guide and I said, "That lizard's really funny." The guide says, "That's no lizard. That's a stand-up chameleon." What do you use to fix a broken pumpkin? A pumpkin patch. I can't prove why the chicken crossed the road, but I suspect it was due to foul intentions. The other day I found out my toaster wasn't waterproof. Wow, I was shocked. An older gentleman was dating a woman of similar age when he thought it's time to propose. So he thought he would do it in the traditional way, on bended knee. As he got down in front of her, he said, "Darling, I have 2 important questions for you. The first one, will you marry me?" She was so excited. She said, "Yes, of course, of course. But what's the second question? Will you help me up from here?" What's the easiest building to lift? A lighthouse. What do you get when you divide the circumference of a jack-o'-lantern by its diameter? Pumpkin pie. How do you make a waterbed bouncier? Add some spring water. Did you hear about the cross-eyed teacher? He couldn't control his pupils. I hate it when people act all intellectual and talk about Mozart and stuff, and they've never even seen one of his paintings. Why don't I tell egg jokes? Well, I'd hate to crack 'em up. What does garlic do when it gets hot? It takes its cloves off. You know, ever since I can remember, I've wanted to go back to bed. I was really nervous about flying, so I asked a pilot, how often do planes crash? And he said, well, usually just once. Why did the man with one arm cross the road? Trying to get to the second-hand store. What sits on a seabed and has anxiety? A nervous wreck. Does anybody want my copies of Chiropractor Weekly? I've got loads of back issues.
Want to help us out and look good at the same time? Head over to store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, 3/4 sleeve rock shirts. We got coffee cups. We've got to-go cups. We've got stickers. Check it out today, folks. That's store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com.
Breaking news! Police have discovered that the man who fell off a local nightclub was not a bouncer. Did you know that it's impossible to breathe through your nose while smiling? Ha! Made you smile. Have you ever noticed how quiet bowling alleys are? At any moment you can hear a pin drop. Why didn't the teddy bear eat any dinner? It was already stuffed. Why are elevator jokes the funniest? Because they work on so many different levels. One lady was bragging to another one, my son is a lawyer. What does your son do? The other lady says, well, my son decided to get into the medical profession. She says, oh, wonderful. Is he a doctor? No, he's an undertaker. What does an escalator say when it stops working? Nothing. It just stares. A group of thugs broke into a local police station and smashed all the toilets. Police may not have much luck catching them, as they have nothing to go on. What do you call a penguin that steals baby cephalopods? A squidnapper. What's the difference between in-laws and outlaws? Well, outlaws are wanted. Why did the ghost go to the bar? For the booze. I just wrote a book on reverse psychology. Don't read it. How do you stop a rhino from charging? Don't plug it in. How do you get in touch with a penguin? You give him a wing. What do you call a pig that practices karate? A pork chop. What do pigs and ink have in common? They're both found in pens. I'm giving up drinking for a month. Oh, let me rephrase that. I'm giving up drinking for a month. Why did the banana go to the doctor? He wasn't peeling well.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. You know, I was sitting in my psychologist's office the other day, and he goes, what do you think is the real problem? I said, well, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I think I'm a goat. And he goes, well, how long have you felt like this? Ever since I was a kid. I was interviewing for a possible job in Montana when the interviewer asked me, what are my degrees in? And I told her, well, I'm from Canada, so Celsius. What famous rock group has 4 men that don't sing? Mount Rushmore. I hate it when people steal my idea before I think of it. Why don't ghosts enjoy the rain? It really dampens their spirits. What's the difference between bird flu and swine flu? Bird flu requires treatment, and swine flu requires ointment. I asked my boss for a raise, explaining that 3 companies were after me. And he asked me which ones. I said, well, the electric company, the water company, and the gas company. My buddy named his kids after Star Wars characters. His son Luke thinks it's really cool. His daughter Chewbacca, not so much. I knew a guy that fell into an upholstery machine. He's fully recovered. If at first you can't drink tea, try again. I once saw a one-handed man in a second-hand store. I turned to him and I said, "Sir, I don't think they have what you're looking for." 2 guys are robbing a liquor store when one of them picks up a bottle and turns to the other one and says, "Is this whiskey?" He says, "Yeah, but not as whiskey as robbing a bank." Why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use honeycombs. What sits on the seabed and has anxiety? A nervous wreck. Today I learned that if you flip over a canoe, you can wear it as a hat. It's because it's capsized. Dwayne Johnson's neighbors are clueless about just about everything. But I suppose I would be too if I lived under a rock. My grandfather always said, fight fire with fire. You know, he was a great guy, but a horrible fireman. When I was a kid, my parents moved around a lot, but I always managed to find them. I've been trying to convince my buddy to get a hearing aid, but he just won't listen. My wife and I were in a fancy restaurant, but she wasn't finding anything on the menu that she quite liked. When the waiter came up, she asked him, "Do you serve crabs?" He goes, "Don't worry about it. We'll be happy to serve your husband." Ah! Oh, I seem to have strained my voice. I'm going to let my buddy Manfred do the next joke. What's at the bottom of the ocean and shivers? A nervous wreck. I put pineapple on everything. People think it's weird, but hey, it's Hawaii roll. What are 2 octopuses that look the same called? Identical. If you turn over a canoe, you can wear it on your head because it's capsized. I just read that 5 inches of fat can block a bullet. I'm not fat. I'm bulletproof. I went to the general store. They wouldn't let me buy anything specific. How much does a rainbow weigh? Not much at all. It's pretty light. Rage Against the Machine never specified what machine they were mad at, but I bet it was a printer. What do you call a helpful lemon? Lemonade. Why did the cross-eyed teacher get fired? She couldn't control her pupils. I heard the greatest joke about procrastination. I'll tell it to you later, though. What do you call a fly without wings? A walk. Why did the bicycle fall over? It was too tired. Every day after I wake up, the first thing I do is make my bed. I'm returning this piece of junk back to IKEA tomorrow. You ever wonder why bakers toil so hard? It's because they really need that dough. I didn't want to believe that my roommate was stealing from his job as a road worker, but when I got home, the signs were there. I was watching an episode of Australian MasterChef when the audience clapped when the chef made meringue. I was kind of surprised because I always thought Australians boomerang. If you think time travel is a hassle now, wait till last Wednesday. I finished a big book the other day, 421 pages. That's a lot of coloring if you think about it. My friend John has opened a summer camp for kids where they plant cantaloupe and study mountain lions. He calls it John's Cougar Melon Camp. My brother went on a date yesterday with a lady he met at the zoo. Sounds like it went all right. He told me she's a keeper. Why couldn't the sesame seed leave the casino? Because he was on a roll. How do you light up a sports stadium with a soccer match? Steak jokes are a rare medium well done. My ex-wife was so critical of my lack of direction that eventually I just packed up my bags and right. A woman at the airport fainted and landed on the luggage carousel. We were all worried, but she's coming around now. What do you call a dead magician? An abracadaver. My wife told me to stop ruining her birthday. That's ridiculous. I didn't even know it was her birthday. Did you hear about the cowboy that wanted to adopt a miniature dachshund? That's right. He wanted to get along little doggy. The bartender said, "Sir, we don't serve time travelers here." A time traveler walks into a bar. I can't believe I got arrested for impersonating a politician. I was just sitting around doing nothing. I keep having this recurring dream about a horse in full armor. Actually, it's sort of a nightmare. I just finished reading a book called How to Avoid Getting Ripped Off. I gotta tell you, it was the best $875 that I've ever spent. 90% of us bald men still own a comb. We just can't part with it. A photon checks into a hotel and is asked if he needs help with his luggage. Says, "No thanks, I'm traveling light." I hate it when people say age is just a number. It's obviously a word. Did you hear about the woman that couldn't stop collecting magazines? She's got issues. Some people say I'm too vague, but you know how the saying goes. Never trust a tree. They're all shady. Bilbo woke up one morning to find out that a grocery store had popped up overnight next to his home. There was an unexpected item in the Baggins area. I finally started taking something for my kleptomania. I'm thinking about throwing out my glasses and never wearing them again. I've seen enough. I found a wooden shoe in my toilet today. It was clogged. Why do penguins have such a thick layer of feathers? Because it's snow cold. Just wondering, but is a fake turd the same as a shampoo? When I was 15, I asked my dad if I was adopted. He said, "Not yet, but I'm open to offers." You ever try eating a clock? It's time consuming. Is an arbitrator somebody who used to work at Arby's but now works at McDonald's? Did you hear about the bossy guy that went to the bar? He ordered everybody around. What do you call a teacher that never farts in public? A private tutor. My wife and I were sitting in a fancy restaurant, but she wasn't finding anything on the menu that she quite wanted. So when the waiter came up, she asked him, "Do you serve crabs?" He says, "Oh dear, don't worry. We'll have no problem serving your husband." I was married by a judge. I should have asked for a jury. Why are all movies that star turkeys rated R? Because of their foul language. We all know about Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But have you ever heard of Cole's Law? Yeah, it's thinly sliced cabbage. What's blue and doesn't weigh very much? Light blue. I'm terrified of elevators, and that is why I'm taking steps to avoid them. Swimming with sharks can be expensive. It cost my buddy an arm and a leg. I had a brief relationship with somebody who worked in a camera factory. It never developed. My doctor told me he wanted to talk to me about my weight, and I said, well, thank goodness you're saying something. You know, I know you're busy, but getting to see me 40 minutes after my appointment time is ridiculous. 85% of people are bad at basic math. Thankfully, I'm in the other 25%. I was explaining to my young cousin how the baton works in relay races, and he understood it right away. I really gotta hand it to him. What's a pirate's favorite letter? Well, you'd think it's the R, but it's really the C. What do you call someone who tells dad jokes but isn't a dad? A faux pas. I used to play poker with tarot cards until one time I got a royal flush and the King of Denmark died. Do you know why ironing pants makes them smaller? It decreases them. The other day I asked my boss if I could leave early. He said, sure, if I made up the time. I said, no problem. It's 87 past 63. What kind of underpants do lawyers wear? Briefs. This morning, out of nowhere, Siri yelled, don't call me Shirley. That's when I realized I had left my phone on airplane mode. Before you marry someone, make them use a computer with a slow internet connection. You know, to find out who they really are. How do birds learn to fly? They wing it. The bad news? I'm hanging by a string. The good news? It's a cheese string. You know, it takes half a box of cookies just to get the taste of a salad out of my mouth. I called my wife to tell her I saw a fox on my way to... Fuck off. My neighbor was fired for sweeping girls off their feet. He's a super aggressive janitor. What's a zebra? Well, I'll tell you one thing, it's way bigger than an abra. For her birthday, I took the wife to an orchard to look at the trees. Yeah, well, apparently that's not the Apple Watch she wanted. Scientists have discovered the first fossilized dinosaur fart. They're calling it a blast from the past. I tried smoking a brisket once, but I couldn't keep it lit. You know those kids that wouldn't let you borrow a pencil in class? They grew up to be those drivers that won't let you merge on the highway. Two guys walk into a bar. The third ducks just in time. I went to a psychic the other day, and when I knocked on her door, I heard her yell, "Who's there?" Yeah, so I just left. I once participated in an astronomy-themed competition. I didn't win, but I did get a constellation prize. What do you get from dwarf cows? Condensed milk. I just opened 3 birthday cards and I'm up $150. Boy, I love being a postman. It's just singing in the shower until you get suds in your mouth, and then suddenly it's a soap opera. When does Friday come before Thursday? When you look it up in the dictionary. Of all the inventions in the last 100 years, the dry erase board has to be one of the most remarkable. Never discuss infinity with a mathematician. They'll just go on forever. I broke my finger last week, but on the other hand, I'm all right. I found a great place to order sausages online. I'll send you a link. What did the buffalo say to his son when he left for school? Bye, son. Did you hear about the girl who ate a frog? They say she's going to croak. Ever wonder what kind of music the planets are into? I've heard it's Neptune's. When I see the initials of lovers carved into the side of a tree, I don't think it's cute or romantic. I find it kind of concerning how many people take knives on a date. Did you hear about the ventriloquist whose dummy was a donkey? He was always talking out his ass. What's a duck's favorite ballet? The Nutcracker Suite. I've been recently diagnosed with a fear of giants. That's right, I suffer from fee-fi-phobia. Once upon a time, there was a king that was exactly 12 inches tall. He was a terrible king, but he was a great ruler. What do you call a herd of sheep falling down a hill? A landslide. So I'm sitting at the bar and I hear, "Psst, that color looks great on you." I turned to the bartender. I said, "You talking to me?" He says, "Of course not. It's the peanuts. They're complimentary." My wife warned me about blowing my new whistle in the house, and she gave me one last chance. Unfortunately, I blew it. The existence of Mini Driver leads me to believe that out there somewhere is a gigantic Maxi Driver. I put pineapple on everything. People think it's weird, but it's Hawaii roll. What's the hardest cult to join? The difficult. Speaking of vampires, how do you know if one's sick? Oh, he'll be coughing. What do you call a girl standing at the end of a field between two posts? A net. A limbo champion walks into a bar and is immediately disqualified. What did the fish say when he swam into a wall? Damn. There was a racing snail that got rid of his shell because he thought it would make him faster. Turned out it just made him more sluggish. Why are some pediatricians short-tempered? Because they have little patience.
They say money talks, but all I've ever heard mine say is goodbye.
I've got an inferiority complex, but it's not a very good one. I wrote a book on reverse psychology. Don't buy it. Did you hear about the Italian chef that died? Yeah, he passed away. What is a cat's favorite color? Purple. Why do divers always fall backwards out of a boat? Well, if they fell forwards, they would land in the boat. 3 weeks ago, I sent my hearing aids in for repairs. I haven't heard anything since. The dentist told me I needed a crown. I said, I know. Could you tell my wife that, though? Not all construction is equally enjoyable. For example, digging a hole is boring, and fastening pieces of metal together is riveting. I was sitting here having lunch when it dawned on me. Cottage cheese is not a cheese at all. It's just occurred to me. If I ever go to jail, I've got nothing to worry about because I know my wife will get me out. Why? Because she never lets me finish the sentence. I dig. You dig. He digs. She digs. We dig. They dig. It's not a very long poem, but it sure is deep. When I see the initials of lovers carved on a tree, I don't find it cute or romantic. I find it concerning that many people take a knife along with them on a date. If you wear cowboy clothes, are you ranch dressing? Getting mythology wrong is my Hercules ankle. There are 3 ways to tell when you've reached middle age. The first is memory loss, and I can't remember the other 2. What's a robot's favorite snack? Computer chips. Would a sad robot be the same thing as a cyborg? Why does NASA use Linux as an operating system? Because you can't open Windows in space. What do you give to cure a sick lemon? Lemonade. Why don't ghosts enjoy the rain? It dampens their spirits. I had an appointment to get a reading from a psychic next week, but she just called to tell me I won't be able to make it. My life coach just called. I didn't make the team. What do you call a cow with no legs? Ground beef. I saw two guys, each with a monocle, fighting. They made a freaking spectacle. What's faster than an escalator? An escasooner. You know, it's horrible that 99% of lawyers give the rest of them a bad name. I was going to invest in a funeral home, but I heard that it's a dying industry. What building in Toronto has the most stories? The public library. My 4-year-old cousin's been taking Spanish for over a year, and he still can't say please, which I think is poor for 4. I got arrested for playing my Engelbert Humperdinck records really loud. I sat in the back of the police car singing, "Police, release me, let me go." Why couldn't the Sesame Seed leave the casino? Because he was on a roll. I replaced my rooster with a duck. Now I wake up at the quack of dawn. I stepped out to buy some late night snacks last night, and when I got to the corner store, I noticed the clerk was locking it up. I said, "What are you doing?" The sign says open 24 hours. The clerk turns to me and says, "Not in a row." My dad had a co-joined twin, but they were separated at birth. That's right. I've got an uncle once removed. Did you know that rabbits eat more carrots than people? I'm not really that surprised because I've never heard of a rabbit eating a person. I tried blacksmithing, but I was arrested for forgery. I don't have a dad bod. I prefer the term father figure. What's the hardest cult to join? The difficult. I was walking along the beach when I heard a swimmer yell, "Help! Shark!" And I look out there and there's a shark circling him. And I started laughing. There's no way that shark is going to help him. You know, it's really odd. Numbers not divisible by 2. Someone just called my phone, sneezed, and hung up. I'm getting sick of these cold calls. A friend phoned me and asked me what I was up to, and I told him, well, I think I'm failing this driving test. I'm thinking about throwing out my glasses and never wearing them again. I've seen enough. You know, when I was warned that the film contained adult themes, I was really hoping for more sex and less about mortgages. What do you get from dwarf cows? Condensed milk. What did the janitor yell when he jumped out of the closet? Supplies! Someone asked me, what are 2 large items that hold a lot of water? My answer was, well, damn. Who buys the most Barbies? Australian fathers. My buddy got home last night to find out that somebody broke into his place and stole every single light bulb in the house. He was delighted. There are 3 types of people in this world. Those who can count and those who can't.
I've seen the style before. Terminal psychotic.
Get your shirts, coffee cups, hoodies, and more at store.wellithoughitwasfunny.com. 5/4 of the people in the world won't admit that they're bad at math. My wife didn't take my name when we got married. We thought it might be confusing with both of us named Lee. There have been reports of a necrophiliac in the area, so look alive, people! Why are penguins so good at surfing the internet? Because they have webbed feet. What do sprinters eat before a race? Nothing. They fast. I was gonna tell you a joke about construction, but I'm still working on it. I asked 100 people what brand of shampoo they prefer, and 100% of them said, "What are you doing in my shower?" What does a pig use in the shower to get itself clean? Hogwash. My kid asked me why I make noises every time I stand up. I had to explain to him I'm a grown man. It took 56 years, but I was finally diagnosed with dyslexia. Turns out all these years I've been writing letters to Satan. I've never trusted trees. They'll seem a little shady. Did you know that during Christmas there's only 25 letters in the alphabet? That's right, no L. I heard that the Hulk started recycling. Yeah, he's really gone green. Did you know that if you sneeze and fart at the same time, your body takes a screenshot? What is a volcano's favorite thing to read? Magazines. I tried smoking a salmon once, but I couldn't keep it lit. You know, I tried smoking a brisket once, but I couldn't keep that thing lit. Did you know that it's really easy to cook a stir fry in a meadow? In fact, it's just like a walk in the park. My friend's allergic to bread, but he eats it anyways. You might say he's a gluten for punishment. The easiest time to add insult to injury is when you're signing someone's cast. If there was a pill for procrastination, I'd take it tomorrow. You know, I used to be addicted to the hokey pokey, but I've turned myself around. What do you call it when a hen stares at lettuce? A chicken sees her salad. Ha ha ha! I thought raining cats and dogs was bad until I experienced hailing taxis. What do you call a potato at a sporting event? Also a spectator. When I met my wife, she said she wanted somebody who could make her laugh, so I showed her my bank statement. What happens when doctors get frustrated? They lose their patience. There have been reports of a necrophiliac in the area, so look alive, people! I was going to tell you a joke about time traveling, but you didn't like it. When I told people I was going to start posting a daily video where I told jokes, they laughed at me. Well, they're not laughing now. I miss the old days. You know, when the bills didn't have my name on them. I got fired from my job as a masseuse. Apparently, I rub people the wrong way. My buddy named his dog 5 Miles, so he can say he walked 5 miles every day. My dentist pulled the wrong tooth. He said it was accidental. Cigarettes are like squirrels. They're perfectly safe until you put one in your mouth and set it on fire. I got mugged yesterday. I guess it was the first robin of spring. Why didn't the jalapeno practice archery? Because it didn't have an arrow. What's a calendar's favorite food? Dates. Why did the employee go into work wearing stilts? He wanted a raise. If a group of dolphins is called a pod, and a group of crows is called a murder, what do you call a group of people? Annoying. For the last 5 years, every morning I announce that I'm going for a jog, but I don't. It's my longest running joke. Running into stationary objects can be painful, at least according to a recent poll. My wife asked me where I get all my candy from. I had to let her know. I've always got a few Twix up my sleeve. My wallet is just like an onion. Every time I open it, I cry. You know, I really like dad jokes about eyeballs. The cornea the better. What has 5 toes and isn't your foot? My foot. I'd make a great waiter. Why? Because I bring a lot to the table. We've got a ghost in our house that goes around threatening us with imminent death while cleaning up the place. We call it the Grim Sweeper. What do you call a parrot that's escaped? Polygon. Boeing claims to have invented an invisible airplane. I can't see that taking off. My desire to sing The Lion Sleeps Tonight is always just a whim away. Ah, consciousness, that annoying time between sleep. I visited my friend at his new apartment. He told me to make myself at home, so I promptly kicked him out because I hate visitors. A woman was on trial for stealing guitars when the judge asked, "First offender?" When the prosecution stood up and said, "No, first a Gibson, then a Fender." My uncle, the professional clown, had a heart attack. They've got him on life support. The sweater I bought was picking up a lot of static electricity, so I returned it to the store. They gave me another one, free of charge. What do you call an angsty teenaged robot? A cyborg. My friend's girlfriend demanded that he choose between her and his career as a reporter. I'm afraid he's got some breaking news for her. How do you find a cheetah in the dark? Use a spotlight. Somebody asked me, what are 2 items that hold a lot of water? And I said, well, damn. What are caterpillars frightened of? Dogapillars. What's the hardest thing about learning how to skate? Well, for me, it was the ice. Why was the penguin so popular? He was an ice guy. My farmer friend got a government grant to buy baby chickens. That's right. He got the money for nothing and the chicks for free. Before social media, you could forget that somebody even existed. Good times. You can't run through a campground. You can only ran because it's past tense. How many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but that light bulb has to want to change. My mother asked me to hand out invitations to my brother's birthday party. Yeah, that's how I realized he was the favorite twin. You're on a horse riding at full gallop. Next to you is a giraffe running at full gallop, and behind you, there's a lion on your tail. What do? Get off the carousel. A pair of jumper cables walk into a bar. The bartender says, "I'll serve you, but don't start anything." What's large, gray, and doesn't matter? An irrelevant. I'm already working on my second million, because the first million was a total failure. What do mermaids use to wash their fins? Tide. I rushed into my doctor's office and yelled, "Doc, you gotta help me, I'm shrinking." He says, "You gotta hold on, be a little patient." I broke my finger today, but on the other hand, I'm okay. What did the tectonic plate say when he bumped into the other tectonic plate? "Sorry, that's my fault." I have a condition where I can't stop telling airport jokes. My doctor says it's terminal. I don't know what language oranges speak, but my first guess would be Mandarin. That's it. I am done trying to please people. I mean, if everyone's okay with that. What's orange and sounds like a parrot? A carrot. How many telemarketers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Only one, but he has to do it while you're having dinner. You know, Baldwin is a cool name. It's like the opposite of hair loss. Just wondering, but is a fake turd the same as a shampoo? How deep is a frog pond? Knee deep. Why are pupils the last thing to stop working when you pass away? Because they dilate. What did the lunchbox say to the refrigerator? Don't hate me just because I'm a little cooler. I don't have a dad bod. I prefer the term father figure. I gave up drinking for good. Now I only drink for evil. Did you hear about the guy who created Altoids? They say he made a mint. Arachnophobia is so stupid. Just let spiders get married. What's cooler than a talking dog? A spelling bee. If you ever need me, well, let's just say you're in way more trouble than you know. My dad was born a co-joined twin, but was separated at birth. I have an uncle once removed. What did the grape say when it got stepped on? Nothing. It just let out a little whine. What kind of shoes do bakers wear? Loafers. What's Canada's favorite board game? Sorry. Doctors got together to study the effects of alcohol on the way a person walks. The results were staggering. I heard Amazon is opening a chain of butcher shops. They're going to call them Prime Rib. I just found out that Chicago lost its bid for the 1988 Summer Olympics when officials were concerned that athletes couldn't tell the difference between the starting gun and all the other gunshots. So folks, how's your summer bodies coming? Mine's looking like I better have a good personality. Did you hear about the guy that accidentally put Viagra in his ear? He's hard of hearing now. What do you get when you boil a funny bone? A laughing stock. The only time I've ever been asked for sex is on application forms. To whomever stole my glasses, I will find you. I have contacts. What's the hardest trick in skateboarding? Getting a job. Why do flamingos stand on one leg? Well, if they lifted the other one, they would fall. I love hyperbole more than anyone else in the world. You know those kids that wouldn't let you borrow a pencil in class? They grew up to be those drivers that won't let you merge on the highway. I was once attacked by mimes. They did unspeakable things to me. I would do absolutely anything for a good 8 hours sleep. Except, of course, going to bed 8 hours before I have to get up. For years I was against organ transplants, but then I had a change of heart. If ignorance is bliss, why aren't more people happy? I told my computer that I needed a break. Now all I see are vacation ads. Why aren't dogs good dancers? Because they have 2 left feet. I'm thinking about removing my spine. It's really holding me back. What do you call the security guards at Samsung? I don't know about you, but I call them Guardians of the Galaxy. I scared the mailman by coming to the door naked. Now I'm not sure what frightened him the most. The fact that I was naked, or the fact that I knew where he lived. What's worse than raining cats and dogs? Hailing taxis. You know, I think it's wrong that only one company makes Monopoly. What do you call somebody who's happy on a Monday? Retired. What do horses do when it's time for bed? They hit the hay. What happens when a microscope runs into a telescope? They kaleidoscope. What was the name of the first emperor penguin? Julius Freezer. You know, the worst pub I was ever in was called the Fiddle. It's what I would call a vile inn. Why did divers always fall backwards out of a boat? Well, if they fell forwards, they would land in the boat. What do pampered cows produce? Spoiled milk. Autocorrect can go straight to heel. My wife gave me an ultimatum. Her or my addiction to sweets. My decision was a piece of cake. My boss told me to have a good day, so I went home. I'm so good at sleeping, I can do it with my eyes closed. 7 days without a pun makes 1 week. McDonald's recently failed on introducing a new high-end item to the menu. Yeah, it was a big mistake. I was in an 80s band called The Disease. We were better than The Cure. What's the difference between a well-dressed man and a tired dog? The well-dressed man wears a suit. The dog just pants. What do you call an obnoxious reindeer? Rude off. You know what makes me throw up? That dartboard I mounted on the ceiling. Did you know that your pupils are the last part of you to stop working after you die? That's right, they dilate. A doctor, a politician, and a lawyer walk into a bar. Bartender turns to him and says, "Hey, what is this, some kind of joke?" 2 peanuts walk into a bar. One was assaulted. How did the bullet lose its job? It was fired. I don't tell dad jokes that often, but when I do, he laughs. Someone asked me, what are 2 large items that hold a lot of water? My answer was, well, damn. Why is dough another word for money? Because everybody needs it. What do UFOs and honest politicians have in common? You hear about them all the time, but you never see one. My doctor told me I was going deaf. The news was hard to hear. Life is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. You know, I tried smoking a salmon one time, but I couldn't keep that thing lit. What's the difference between a jeweler and a jailer? One sells watches, the other one watches sells. What weighs more, a gallon of water or a gallon of butane? A gallon of water, because butane is a lighter fluid. You know, you can tell a lot about a person from their hands. For instance, if they're around your neck, they're probably upset with you. What goes down but doesn't come up? A yo. I taught my dog to meditate. Now he's a werewolf. My wife asked me to stop singing Wonderwall at dinner, and I said, maybe. The bartender broke up with her boyfriend, but he convinced her to give him one last shot. There was a really competitive art competition in my city recently. It came down to 2 contestants, and it ended in a draw. What do you get if you stand between 2 llamas? Laminated. What do you get when you cross a disgruntled sheep with an angry cow? A weird animal that's always in a bad mood. What's a penguin's favorite dessert? Baked Alaska. Why do birds fly south of the winter? Because it's way too far to walk. I told my wife that the next door neighbor died. She said, "Who, Ray?" I said, "Look, I know you didn't like him that much, but you don't need to celebrate." I don't want to brag, but I know the capital of every single state. For example, the capital of Wyoming is W. Let me be clear. Nothing tops a cheese pizza. I'm planning on opening a frozen yogurt and newsstand. I'm going to call it Froyo Information. Speaking of dogs, where should you never take your dog? To the flea market. Who won the neck decorating contest? It was a tie. To the 2 crooks that broke in and stole my calendar, I hope you both get 6 months. Last year I gave up drinking for New Year's, but I only lasted 3 days because I ended up hospitalized for dehydration. I've got a fear of speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over it. Bacon and eggs walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve breakfast here." I taught myself to juggle clocks. My wife says it's just more proof that I have way too much time on my hands. You don't need a parachute to go skydiving. You need a parachute to go skydiving twice. Why couldn't the sailor learn his alphabet? He kept getting lost at sea. I asked the lion in my wardrobe what it was doing, and it said, Narnia business. I accidentally handed my wife a glue stick instead of her chapstick when she asked for it, and, well, she's still not talking to me. You know, with all these scheduling apps and everything, I fear for the paper calendar. I think its days are numbered. Gambling addiction hotlines would be way busier if every fifth caller was a winner. If you arrive fashionably late in Crocs, you've just arrived. Do I enjoy courthouse puns? Guilty as charged. Why is it bad to iron a 4-leaf clover? Well, you should never press your luck. Horse walks into a bar. Bartender says, "Hey." Horse says, "You read my mind." Before you judge a person, walk a mile in your shoes. After that, who cares? You're a mile away and you've got their shoes. I gave up drinking for good. Now I only drink for evil. I was giving my imaginary son crap for his failing grades when I asked him, "Have you got anything to say for yourself?" And he said to me, "Eee." That's when I cut him off. I said, "I don't appreciate you taking that tone with me." What's the hardest thing about learning how to ride a bike? Well, for me, it was the pavement. What's the medical term? Too many dogs. A roverdose. 3 snowboarders are in a car. Who's driving? A cop. If you're gonna borrow money, borrow it from pessimists. They never expect it back. The other day I saw a baguette in a cage. Reality called. Reality called. Reality called. I declined to answer.